first scheduled appointment is Rebecca Maytek. Did I say that right? Attack.
It's like arithmetic. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, good afternoon.
Can you hear me? All right.
That's better.
I'm here to tell you what's been going on at the library and answer any questions you might have. So I just figured I'd go right down the line. We had the plant sale, the Friends had the plant sale on Saturday, and I thought it was a huge success. They were obviously very successful. They had a lot of people come. People were very respectful. They wore their masks, they social distanced. You were there. I thought it was excellent. So I wanted to tell you how much I appreciated being able to do that. I was very pleased with how it turned out. So I felt pretty comfortable, and I got to see a lot of my library patrons and community people, so that was really nice. So thank you. So that was good. I wanted to share with you that we've been preparing the building for social distancing, and I've been talking to Rich and Pete Broderick, so we've been talking about different things that we need to put in place to make the building safe. We are planning, he got the quotes for the sneeze guards, the buzzer, and those things. I'm talking about getting...
We're hearing someone's voice. Are they muted?
It sounds like feedback.
Yeah, but there's someone that's zooming in and we can hear them talking to someone else.
Sure. Okay. So preparing the building as far as that's concerned, so we're still in that because there's such a lead time for some of these items. Cleaning the carpet, and then the big thing we've been working on for the last couple of weeks is training the staff in the CDC universal guidelines, cleaning and sanitizing processes, those kind of things. I wanted to share that the trustees approved a pandemic policy, so we would have something to follow. And then on Thursday, they're going to be considering a phased reopen plan. And I don't know if you got this stage reopening plans in your packet this week, but I can share that with you. Okay. So what we're getting ready to do is we're hoping that next week that we can offer a type of curbside delivery, that people would be able to come to the library. The building would be closed, but we're hoping that we would be able to do something like that where we make an appointment with a patron and they would be able to pick up one of their books, and it would be a single service. So that's what we're thinking about doing next. And so we're putting up a lot of signage in the library. I wanted to share also that while we were closed, we shifted to digital services, and we've had a lot of success with that. The first week we were giving out craft kits. We gave out over 500 to kids so they could do a craft at home. We have 3 story times per week. We had 1 week's over 1,600 views. So that looks like a service that's going to continue. The youth librarian is planning a summer reading program, and it is primarily going to be digital. They're hoping to have, or we're hoping to have, maybe 2 or 3 programs that are outdoors, within the guidelines of the gathering, 10 people, or have a drive-in style program. We've had our Wi-Fi on continuously, 24 hours a day. That's been a service that's been used. I don't have any statistics on it. One idea I had was maybe we could expand the Wi-Fi into other areas of the town. for people that don't have internet at home, that they could access at different areas of the town.
Has anyone been asking for that, Rebecca, that you know of? Okay, just curious.
No, because they drive up and they're in their cars and
Right.
use it that way. We've also lent, we have 4 Chromebooks, so we have made appointments with people who have been applying for unemployment and doing job searches. There have been 2 people that have used that service. We haven't been offering it the last couple of weeks, but we did offer that early on when we were closed. So those services are something that I feel is very important because people don't have computers, they don't have access to the internet, they are applying for unemployment and looking for jobs. The other service I feel is important is the copier, having access to the copier, and we could build in a service where they make an appointment and possibly drop off their items, we copy them and then give them back. Just trying to come up with ways to serve their needs, because that's been unavailable for so many weeks. We've hosted 3 blood drives since we've been closed, and the Red Cross has asked us to host another one on June 18th. So given that you've been okay with the last ones, are you okay with us doing this one on the 18th?
Oh, yeah, I understand.
Any objection from the board?
As long as the same protocols are in place in terms of cleaning before and after and all that, I have no issues with that at all. It's great.
Okay, thank you.
It's gotta work, the site's gotta work well for them, is probably what it is.
Well, they had the site, the church still isn't open, so it's sort of an emergency. They ask us, and it's really easy. We just open the front doors and they take care of it. So it's a really good place.
Can I just ask what you've done since you've been closed with the staff? Have they been furloughed, or what was?
Sure. So the 3 full-time staff have been telecommuting, and we have, they started telecommuting in the beginning. And so, just so you know, we created a telecommuting policy so they would work in certain hours and know that they had to do work during those hours and act just like they were in the library. So we also ask all of the staff to keep a daily task list so we know what they're working on and they're accountable for what they're working on. And the part-time staff were not working for about 4 weeks, and then we brought them back, and they've been working after that ever since. So they've been doing inventory of all the items in the library, and that actually was very helpful because when they moved to the new library, I don't think anyone went through the computer system and reconciled any of the records. So we've cleaned up the entire database, and we're working on other projects. So they are working now, and I also have, I have 1 part-time person that continues to telecommute. He's a retired library director, and he's been working with me on the policies.
Okay, so for the part-timers, they spent 4 weeks furloughed, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's the long answer.
And in the meantime, you've been working on training for COVID policies so that when we do open up, that you're good to go.
We've been training on those for the last 3 weeks, and it's
Okay, if I
slowly
say, could you
ramping
ask
up
Helen?
to
I don't have to say
that, to getting better.
more formal than that.
Wearing the mask and gloves while working with the materials, just getting used to the health checks this week. It's just adding each thing every week.
Are you still not gonna take in book donations at this point?
It's not advised right now because there's still you don't know where the items have come from.
And being one of the people that volunteers to process them, I'm not ready to do that, to be very honest with you, because unless we have some way to fumigate the books, you don't know where they've been, exactly as you said.
Right, well, And that's one of the things we've been working on is, the question is, how long does the virus last on certain materials? And there's some wiggle room there. I'm sure you've all been reading things about it. So I think I've settled on 7-day quarantine for any items coming back into the book drop. And we have a system to do that. I just ordered bins, and everything will get checked in and cleaned and put in the bins for 7 days. So everything will be safe. So that's all in this policy, and making sure that the staff is following those procedures for everyone to be safe. And
May want to double check that, because I think they just sent out some revised guidance last week that it
Yes.
really isn't prone to transmission on surfaces
right,
versus what they were saying previously.
right, that's true. It's changing, and yep, there is a group that's doing studies just on library materials. It's so, but their study's not going to come out until August, so we're going by the CDC guidelines. Thank you. I'm also working with Cindy on any policies. I was interested because of the situation with the health checks, and that it seems like staff will be sent home more often, depending on what symptoms they have. If you're working on a sick policy, and I'll be talking to Cindy about that, but that will help me develop any additional policy related to sick time. So do you have any questions, any concerns about us doing any curbside delivery, opening the book drop, any of those things?
Where's that coming from?
I think the biggest thing is, library's always been its own kind of separate entity. As long as you're coordinating with buildings and grounds and our health officer, they're both aware of what the guidance is for this building and the other ones. I mean, Rich, did you have anything you wanted to add in that?
So, Rebecca and I have talked about some changes, some shielding and whatnot, so that our staff is shielded from the public when the building does open up. This is not working? Sorry.
No, I don't think it's you. I think it's someone.
I had to mute Adam. You should be good. We're getting good.
Working now?
Yeah.
So as long as we're talking about this, Rebecca's made some requests about some shielding. I think I gave you guys just a quick thumbnail, one vendor, one price. I think it was somewhere around $11,000. Round number 10 grand. I don't know exactly what it was. To put up permanent glass structures at 3-4 locations. Quite honestly, we can do it a lot cheaper with plexiglass. With my guys, actually, either plexiglass or with wooden structure, or plexiglass with metal structure, like we did downstairs in the town hall for the town clerk. Question I have, is this going to be covered as part of the money that's come from the state, the $147,000 to protective measures in libraries? Does that qualify? I don't know that. I would think it does, their town building. And which way do we want to go? We want to go expensive and permanent, cheap and temporary? Just need to know. And we'll get those things made up. If we're making them in-house, we can make it work.
I'll word in, since everybody else is kind of looking around. My vote would be go expensive and permanent, because we don't know what this is going to do. And not only is this setting up a safety for breathing and stuff, but it also sets up a little more security in most cases. I mean, I don't know exactly where you're putting it down there, but.
So that's what you're looking for, something permanent?
We're just looking for sneeze guards, you know, to make sure that the staff and the patrons are safe. I haven't really made a decision on that. I'm just trying to go out for quotes. I just called Premier Glass to see about a plexiglass screen. So
Yeah.
I talked to Granite State. I haven't gotten a quote yet. But we're just in the stages of getting quotes right now.
But there's gonna be a difference between something temporary and something permanent and how you deal with it, the people that you deal with daily. So I didn't know if you had any thoughts on how you wanted to deal with that.
The other issue is cleaning them. It's a lot easier to clean the glass than it is to clean the plexiglass.
Plexiglass will scar and scratch, you know, with much time at all.
I wouldn't disagree with permanent. My only problem with permanent is it would require engineering to make sure it's gonna be what you need versus going off of just one person saying, I can do this. And it would have to go out to bid because it's the dollar amount, which is gonna push you further out. But I would strongly urge, if we're going to do the permit, which I'm not against, it's properly engineered.
Yes. Yeah, and luckily we have a structure on the front desk that may make it a little easier. I don't have to get into details, but I have looked at that to see how it could be posted on the front desk or attached.
By the same token, if we went temporary with shield guards for every employee, that would buy us some time to figure out exactly what needs to be done. And number two, you also need to find out if any of that's covered by any of the FEMA funds. But in the meantime, if you had the shield, the face shields for every employee, that certainly would protect them and even give the patrons some sense of security in knowing that the staff was protecting themselves and not disseminating any germs. So it may be, we may need to do a little bit of both. We may need to do a short-term solution and make sure that we spend the money wisely and permanently. This is not our last pandemic, but hopefully not for another 10 years, to be real honest with you. But by the same token, you gotta do something in between. And I think the face guards, the shields, that headwind may be the way to go temporarily, and then move forward from there to something more permanent and with vendors that are approved and tested and so forth. It's my opinion.
So I'll go back to, we could do what we needed to do and open the library up next Monday, from my perspective, you know, just the shielding. You're not ready for that. I know that. Your staff's not ready for that. And we can go out to bid for the you know, permanent, more, you know, standard structure, stuff like you'd see at the bank or whatever. I don't care. The permanent is obviously expensive, needs to go out to bid. We're talking, to do it according to the policy, you're gonna be at least a month to a month and a half before, you know, you get specs written, RFP, get the numbers in, and then schedule the work. So
You're talking probably 2 or 3 weeks to get the product once you order it.
exactly.
We're all so far behind.
And then schedule someone to do it, because we're not the only fish
Right?
in
Everyone's
the ocean
doing
right
it.
now.
Yep.
So, obviously I'll work with Rebecca and we'll figure this out. I don't know what the timeline is, but I guess who's looking at all these grants, and is the library, can we use some of that money out of the library for? Because I know they're not considered a critical infrastructure. I think they're a necessary thing, and we should get the library opened up as soon as possible, because a lot of people need access to those computers, and let's face it, the library is the most used building in the town during normal times. The traffic volume in and out of the library is higher than the town hall and police station and the fire station put together. So,
Can I suggest maybe, Rebecca, I hate to put something else on your plate, but you're great when it comes to looking at grants and being able to put together. I'm not saying you should put together, but could you at least look to see which one of the funds that are available out there might be applicable to libraries? Could you help us at least with that piece of it?
We are including the library a little in this first round of the state grant, and we'll see how that works out.
Oh, okay.
As a town building,
You're still a municipal building, that is correct. so it's gotta fall under some of that. Maybe even if you check with some of your colleagues at some of the other libraries, I know you've got a task force going, I think,
Yes.
on the library, and maybe through there, but we need to know where to go.
Sure.
Before you can, you wanna say what we had available.
And I would look at this like any other department. I mean, you guys are gonna have to do the legwork to figure out what you want. We're not here to tell you that. We're here to tell you no or yes, I guess, at the end of the day. But I would hope that we're taking all facets of this into consideration, i.e. security, pandemic, all that stuff that we get dinged on for insurance, you know, for lack of security for the employees or anything like that. Let's make sure this is all encompassing, that, you know, it covers all those things
Yes.
this one time. And then, obviously, we're gonna need 3 bids on this. I know you said you're reaching out to those guys, but I think in the interim, you know, finding something as a temporary solution while that's taking place to get you guys open again in accordance with the rules is probably your best bet.
Good idea. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
I'm good.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Rebecca.
Congratulations on your plan sale.
Oh, thank you.
All right, up next, I have Rich St. Hilaire and the Fire Station Building Committee for septic system opening bids.
Good.
Take one down, pass it around.
Right or left?
I asked 4 locals to give us bids on a plan that was approved by the state. This is for the house next door to the fire station that we did the land swap with, 146 Main Street. Part of the agreement is because her septic system is on the land that we now own, town needs to install a new septic system, just so the folks out there in cyber world knows what's going on. So you should have 4 different vendors, 4 different numbers, and
This is all one spec that they were bidding to.
they all had the same plan to bid on. Yep.
Can I ask, we didn't want to bundle it with the fire station septic plan?
I'm sorry, say it again, Kevin.
We didn't want to bundle it with the fire station septic plan? We just-
Negative. Nope, we gotta get this done. This is part of the agreement. We're not gonna build a fire station till next year.
Okay.
I think we made an agreement that this would happen this summer.
That's fine.
So, if not in the written, it was a verbal agreement that we'd get this done and it'd be done with, because at the time, who knew if the voters were gonna approve the building? So this is standalone.
Okay.
Make it happen.
Okay, Susan, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, start with Rich and work.
F&S Construction, 45 Mill Road, Kingston, is $9,650. Are we gonna assume these are written to spec and then check them later?
Kingston Construction of Kingston, New Hampshire is $10,450.
BPB Construction, 50 Church Street, Kingston, 12,500.
And I have Septic Designs of New Hampshire LLC, Folsom Street in Exeter, a grand total of $13,750.
I don't think I've ever seen that, where they're all,
All went up as it went around.
You couldn't have timed that better.
okay, so Rich, who's yours?
F&S Construction, correct, was yours, 9,000, it's a low bid. Gonna make a recommendation, guys, award the bid, and it'll be done to the specs.
I'll second that. Well, I'll make the motion, I guess.
I'll second it.
So what is the
I
number?
can't, I can't make the motion, pal.
To take the low bidder, is that the motion?
You wanna glance through?
So typically how we do this is you're gonna verify that all this is covered in there, right?
It's gonna be put into the plan.
Okay.
He's made the bid, so he had the plan, they all had the plan, Fred's sitting right here. It's a simple pipe and stone system. It's a little bit cheaper than I thought it was gonna be. I figured in the 12 to 15, I'm glad the number's lower. And he's obviously a competent installer, he's been doing it for a long time, so. And it was a standard plan, there's no smoke and mirrors here,
And he's local, even better.
yeah.
Okay, so you got a motion?
I made the motion and Rich Wilson seconded it. And that was to award the bid.
All right, motion and second, further discussion?
I just want clarification. So when we award the bid, you're still gonna read every proposal, make sure that they're comparable? Because like this one, for example, has disclosures, does not include removal of any large trees, does not include removing the old leach field, no damage done to irrigation.
Yep,
drainage,
so
or
what,
whatever.
so like say the fire department wants an ambulance.
Yep,
We'll open the bids in here.
yep,
We'll recommend the low bidder, but we'll also hand all these back to
okay,
the department head and they verify that everything is up to snuff.
I'm good.
So,
But just to your point, what you just read, I can tell you Kingston did allow for removal and replacing, which I believe yours did the same thing. So yours was most expensive, and he wasn't even doing the removal.
Correct. So that's why I asked the question,
Yeah.
just so that we're comparing apples and oranges, or not comparing apples and oranges.
further discussion? Okay, roll call vote?
Alessio?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
St. James?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
And Wilson?
Yes.
You sure?
Anything else from the fire station building committee?
It's Fred's bid. It's even better, it's a Kingston.
So just a quick update from the last time we met on several topics. I don't have a nice printout for you this time.
And we can't accept that without a nice printout.
Because we need sunglasses to watch you.
Right. And put it in 14 font so I could see it. So first is an update on the SMP, the architect's contract. I sent today to Sumner and Primex 4 things. So the latest and greatest back from SMP, they went back to their legal and they went back to Primex, who's also their insurer. So there are some things in the contract that they definitely did make changes to from town council plus Primex. So I sent that as an attachment. That's in there, the latest with the edits from Primex and town council that they accepted. The comments from SMP that they can't accept, the insurance of $1 million. If we want to make it 4 million, that's going to be on us, right? So the insurance. So they're basically saying we're going to stick with $1 million unless the town of Kingston says make it the cost of the building, which we can do. We're just going to get charged for that. There was some wording in there on the Primex side that the insurance company, who's Primex, just a different person reviewing it, said, no, it stays. So it's the same reviewer.
So the same company's paying
Same
two
company
lawyers to
insures
fight each other.
us as they do SMP.
That's,
So we have to come to an agreement here somewhere. So they have that. They also have the original Primex input and the original Sumner Kalman input. So that went back to both of them for one last go at it, and hopefully we'll get something back this week and we can.
So essentially, the only sticking point is the $1 million insurance.
Yep, and that was Primex saying, should it be the value of the building? And
Primex
said no.
Primex saying, no, leave it at $1 million, because that's what we insure SMP
that's the
for.
greatest thing I've ever
It's
heard.
crazy.
Can we meet them in the between and go for 2 million or 2.5?
We can, let's see what Primex comes back.
Well, I think the discussion we had last time, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, but we were okay with $1 million
Yeah,
because
We were okay
even if
with
they had
Okay with $1 million.
for an architect to have $1 million oopsie is pretty substantial.
And that's the architect's point. For me to mess up $1 million worth of
Yeah.
is bad.
Yeah, I mean, what happens is when the building first starts, there's no investment, so you don't need a lot of insurance.
Right.
When you get to midway, it's the only time you have any worry, but hopefully we are on the ball payment-wise, so we haven't paid more than, and then once you get to the top and you're above $1 million, you're fine, so.
Right.
I mean, even if there's a disaster halfway through, it's not the full value of the property,
Right.
no matter what. And you're still gonna have I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, out of the architect's mouth, he says, this thing has to fall down into the cellar for me to get on the hook for
I
that.
mean, that could be arranged, but still.
Okay, anyway, I just pushed it out one more time.
Okay,
Let's see what we get back. A lot of changes that are in there, so hopefully I can have that at the next meeting. I don't know if it's gonna be next Monday or not, but, hopefully I can get that done. Asbestos abatement on the Howard House, so on the Rock Rimmon House. We have a purchase order. The chief has that with a quote. So we need to do 2 abatements, one for the existing fire station, that'll be $7,800. We don't need that done right now, but we do need to abate the house, and that's a $4,200 purchase order, and would like to at least get that rolling to get the asbestos out of the house, and we can then get that either burned or removed or whatever we're gonna end up doing with it. Right now, it's a kind of a problem for us to burn it because we can't really have 25 people standing around.
What's asbestos in that house?
They're saying the ceiling in 3 bedrooms.
Really?
It's an older home. That house was standing in 70, 71. Before then, it was built in the 60s, I think.
Interesting. I would never thought that, but okay.
How many quotes did you guys get on that?
What?
How many quotes did you guys get on that?
How many quotes?
How many quotes?
Would you like us to get 2 more?
I think in the interest of transparency for the taxpayers on this, I think it's a good precedent to us to set that we're getting 3 bids on everything.
Anything.
But I put that to the board. I mean, it's up to the board if that's,
That's good.
Yeah.
Did they, Rich? Yes. Did they charge us for inspection? Did we have to pay to get this price from Accolade?
Yes, like, $1,200, I think, in both buildings.
We had to pay $1,200 to get a $4,800 bid.
So because it's not just an estimate of, so if you talk to a new company, they're gonna go in and they're gonna retest everything that, I'm assuming.
So the way the process works is you're gonna bring someone in, they're gonna take the same samples and maybe more, and they're gonna send them out and see whether they're asbestos or not. Whoever the company is gonna do the same evaluation and probably look at as many tests, maybe more, and you're gonna pay them for doing that. They come up with a report, and then you can hire them to dispose of all, come in and take all the bad juju out of the house and dispose of it properly. So it's, if you want 3 more companies to come in and do the same thing, that's okay. I can tell you, this company's worked with the town and done a lot of free work over the years. Grace Daily Barn, we did the same thing. We never got a bill for that. He's been into the schools. I know it's a different budget. No charge. There's been, help me out here, Briggs. I know there's been 2 or 3 other cases where Accolade has been in Kasabian and done things for nothing. I think he's actually been in your building.
Lives over on Ball Road.
So they wouldn't, so someone else coming into bid would not use his report.
They would have to go in and do their own site evaluation, pull their own samples, send it out to their own labs,
Okay.
come up with an evaluation of what's there and a plan to remediate the problems.
It doesn't make sense to spend another $4,000 getting tests from 3 other companies when we can get it done for $4,000.
So was the 1,200 included in this price or additional?
It did both buildings, and it was a separate invoice.
Separate quote.
The-
So in
the-
other words-
And you're going on my memory, Rich, okay?
Well, no,
It seems though it was like $1,200, and I paid for it out of my budget.
So basically, you're saying if we bring in 2 more companies, we're talking about roughly $1,000 more to get 2 more estimates, so we're gonna spend half of this to get those estimates.
I'm not in favor of doing that.
no, that's, I mean, that doesn't pass the
Doesn't
common
make sense,
sense test,
no.
but
I'm gonna
Good
make a
thought.
motion. I'll make a motion that we approve and sign this.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Who was the second? Was it?
Done.
Roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
St. James?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
So just for the record, if if we were not gonna get charged for them to do, estimates, then we would have gotten 3 or 4 bids with spending that kind of money.
Yeah, I've seen those guys, they just come in, they're like, oh, that tile right there, I can tell right from here it's asbestos. You know, that's typically how those guys quote things when I've seen it.
So the last thing was just a quick update on the fire suppression system. So we've kind of come full circle on this. Initially, the direction we were going was the fire suppression system, the cistern, the fire pump, the building was going to be outside of the scope of the architect and mechanical people, and it was going to be kind of on the Town of Kingston to get that done. Over several weeks and over several discussions with SFC, so our fire protection engineer for the town, Jeff Murphy, he kind of pointed us in a different direction, and in discussion with the architect, we finally have agreed, and it's probably absolutely the right thing to do. So I'm not saying that the cost of the fire suppression wasn't in the budget, it was just on our side of the line versus an SLP. So it was gonna be a separate project, separate construction, separate mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all that stuff. So we would have taken that on. Over the last week, it's gone back under the responsibility of the architect and Bowen Construction. Jeff was saying the same thing. I think Rich will agree. It's the right thing to do for consistency, timing-wise, scheduling-wise, coordination of the construction, where it's going, the design. But out of that, one of the things that we will need to do is hire SFC engineering to at least spec out what the minimum design needs to be, based on the fact that we have a new fire station, we have a town hall, and we have the old library that needs to be on this fire suppression system.
About the church?
Don't know. That's one of the questions today. The church is either, we need to know, is the church in or out within the next week or two?
So they spoke to me on Tuesday, and looking for more information. I told them I'd bring it back to the board. They are interested in getting onto the new system. That's what they spoke with all of their individuals that sit on their board of directors, and they were looking for some direction from the town as to, you know, what we thought we would want them to do. You know, is there a cost associated with that? If so, what is it? And I told them I'd bring it to the board today and have that same discussion, but they are definitely interested in getting on to the new system.
Okay. So
I would think it would behoove them to get on the system. I'm not looking to make money off the church, but I feel they should at least incur the costs that it would be to put them on.
And I would agree with you. I think that if I were an elder of the church, I'd want to be on the new system with the town that's part of my community as opposed to a private vendor. That alone would make, but I do think they would be obligated to bear the cost of that.
Do we know, I know you were gonna look at, for the fire suppression person, whether that, putting them on would change anything or increase the cost.
So that's what we'll hire SFC to do. So they already did, they were very key in the system that's there now. So they know the buildings, they can come in, and Jeff said, I think I threw out all my paperwork, but he can kind of come back and do his assessment, right? So he's gonna come in, look at the sprinkler heads here, look what's over at the library, do his calculations.
He threw out his paperwork?
He went paperless, and he said, I threw out all my papers.
Well, then I really have a problem using them as sight unseen. If they're not keeping records, and then that's definitely gonna have to.
Well, that was 25 years ago, so.
But still,
So he'll see what he can find, but he's one of the best in the States for what that's worth.
That's what everybody keeps telling me.
No, we don't have to hire them, but They're familiar with the buildings, they're familiar with the system.
They got their hands in all pockets in town, I'm just saying.
Right, well, they're also our engineering firm, by the way. So
That's what I mean, they're everywhere.
town's engineers.
Tell them to get creative.
So as far as bringing another entity involved in something that's gonna be for the town buildings, I have no problem bringing the church in, but what happens when another business down this end of town wants to tie into it? Someone on Depot Road. The school has an agreement with Sanborn Regional School System. I don't know how that translates into Sanborn selling that building to Chindela, but they need to figure that out. Those three, Chindela, the school, and the church. And I'll give you my 2 cents worth on buying into the new system. It's gonna be about $80,000 just to run the pipe and do the plumbing to hook up these buildings to the fire station. And again, that's a thumbnail. I got an estimate a few years ago to look at it. And then you've got your monthly, quarterly, and yearly tests that need to happen. And I'm gonna guess that's gonna be somewhere around $10,000 to $15,000 a year. We've got 2 buildings on it. If you're gonna build it for the church, they're 1/3 of the load. They pay 1/3 of the cost, but that's up to you guys. The church has already paid to buy into the system at the school, and supposedly that is forever. I remember reading the contract, but again, that was 25 years ago. 20 years, no, actually, they bought in after the town, so 15 years ago-ish.
If that's the case, then behooves the church to contact the school and figure out what's going on, for us to get in the middle of that.
Exactly. It's gonna, if you're fair to the taxpayers in Kingston, you're providing water to an outside entity, they gotta pay their cost.
They're interested in coming with us, that's what, they've already taken action, and that was what they informed me the other day, that they just wanted the town to tell them what they were gonna require.
I'm not worried about other businesses that might wanna tie in for a couple of reasons. One, this is a special issue here. In my opinion, it is, okay? In my opinion, it is. I have no trouble saying no to someone else down Depot Road or Church Street or whatever. But that's not to say that the town, in 10 years' time, is not gonna look at an opportunity to bring in water, given all the aquifers we have underneath us. And that may be another opportunity in terms of growth of the community, but right now, I don't see a problem. That's, again, my opinion.
Hey, Rich, as far as the hookup cost, all that piping's already run. Isn't it a matter of just putting a cap and keep it from going to the school instead of?
So you're gonna have to pipe from the new fire station out here somewheres on the street. And
That's it?
and that's it, and put another shut-off valve beyond the church.
So,
Or right there at the gate going into the the old seminary building.
right, I mean, I guess if anyone wanted to come on there, that would be an item for another time, but the reason that was, and what I've always been told, is because they do the senior luncheons there, and the kitchen facility that they have there is why it was seen in the community's interest to have that on public, or on a separate system, so that it would be a place where we could feed senior citizens on a weekly basis. I would think that at a minimum, they would be paying half of the maintenance cost though, because they haven't paid a thing for what their current setup is for 25 years. And
So I sent you the contract, I emailed it to you this morning, but this is a paper copy of the contract between the school district and the church from 2012.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it isn't 25 years.
So they paid, and it's, October 1st, 2012. So it says, the town of Kingston paid $30,000 and the church paid $30,000. I don't think it says, I'm not sure what it says, I haven't read through the whole thing about yearly maintenance. But
Just one thing to pin in on it, is the system's at the school now, goes to the church, then comes this way. Now we're talking about reversing the system. So the pipe sizing may be exactly backwards, so we may be talking pipe runs from here to there?
It's all 6-inch.
Is it? No step downs? Okay.
Step down into the building. I was actually not even down into the building. It's 6 inches for all 3 buildings.
Okay.
And that's metal piping?
Sorry?
Metal piping?
Cast iron probably.
I think it's ductile iron pipe.
So we don't
Run
know,
that right now.
we don't know if that will need to be replaced till you start to dig, is that correct?
That'll let us all.
Ductile iron pipe's been in the ground for 100 years and it's still using it in the city, so. And it might be plastic, but I honestly don't remember. I don't remember.
So it looks like we did a 50-50 split before, right? Is what you're reading on that contract?
Well, I don't know what the overall price was, but the town paid 30,000, the school paid 30,000.
So I would recommend we look at the same thing, if we're gonna allow someone else to buy in, and it's gonna cost us a certain amount of money. It looks like we did a 50-50 split before.
It is, I don't know about their 1/4, or if you wanna go by load, 1/3. I would say, I personally would say at least the yearly maintenance, 1/3 or 1/4 the yearly maintenance, and then some sort of offering to run the pipe, the cost of the pipe.
So the original agreement, the school put the system in first. And I think the cistern and the pump was around $120,000. Again, that was 25 years ago, or damn close to it when they put the cistern in. The town was the first one to buy into it because the fire marshal closed this building, wouldn't let us use the building, and we had to do something with water. And the town bought into the system for the $30,000, and we paid to have the piping brought from the school property to these 2 buildings, the town hall and the old Nichols Library, the museum. And then the church proposed an expansion, and they needed to sprinkle their building for life safety codes, and they approached the school, and the school, I forgot that it was the same number, $30,000, but they charged it there. So basically, the school paid the Lions portion to put the system in. We paid 30, so that's about a quarter, 25%, and the school paid 25%. The church paid 25%. Again, I'm going by old memories, but I think those were the numbers. But thirds, my recommendation's thirds.
Did we send that, who's that contract signed by?
Yep. Nancy Russ from the Sanborn School District School Board Chair, and I forget, Leach lives on New Boston Road corner, Main Street, New Boston Road. Cletus?
Yes.
Clovis Leach.
So we usually send any contracts off to be reviewed by our council.
Are we signing a contract right now? I don't think we're doing anything like that right now.
So what sparked this conversation?
Well, I think what's gonna make a difference is we first need to see if there's anything different for liability purposes for the town, if we're gonna let outside agencies or outside businesses use it. I would at least wanna have looked at by our council to make sure what we may be incurring for liability issues and get some guidance there.
We have that already with the school. We are the school. So, I don't know. There's not much difference between the school and the town, except the town doesn't have Newton to share it with.
No, I'm looking at the
I'd like to
church.
think we're a little more judicious with our liability incurring
Than
than
the
the school is.
Okay, I'm not gonna argue the point.
Now, I guess the point is, what if the church catches on fire and the system fails?
Right,
And that's the point here, is there's engineering associated with that there's gonna be a cost for that.
right.
And we're 2 entities, so a quarter is, or a third isn't gonna cut it, where it's the town and the church. And at a minimum, it needs to be 50% of the yearly
Well,
maintenance.
that's why they did 50-50.
It's
My
50-50
concern
now.
is just what you just said. So I think we should at least run it by our council, so just to see what we're incurring for liability.
Well, I would say, instead of council, Primex are risk assessment.
Sure.
I don't think we need to go to council.
Oh, but-
That's just my opinion.
Well, we use them as counsel too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We just risk review, what does it set us up for liability?
I would disagree with you there, because Primex is gonna look at certain things that have to do with insurance liability. There are other liabilities that we could be incurring here, like, you know, 50 years from now, if one of those pipes doesn't work anymore, who's on the hook to do that?
I see some moral coming, some ethical storyline coming in an email.
Well, you're making it sound like we shouldn't do this with the church, to be honest with you.
No, I think,
Let them stay where they are and take their chances and maybe buy into
No, I think
town down the
I just
road.
don't think we should be giving out freebies for someone else to benefit from.
I
our work.
don't argue with you there.
I think that's where we started the whole conversation, was what is the cost? So I think we have to figure out the cost and then look at it and say, this is what it's gonna cost you. And at the same time, we can go to legal and risk and see. It doesn't mean we're doing it, we're only doing our due diligence by giving them the cost.
we're protecting the town.
Or they can stay right where they are and still tie into the school because the Chinbrook's gonna use the water there for now anyways.
Yes.
So it's not like that's gonna change anything for them.
So we're gonna incur a cost, as a building committee for Jeff Murphy to go into the church, figure out what kind of pressure and gallons per minute and how big the cistern needs to be, to size the correct pump if the church is on our system. We're gonna have to do the same thing here in the library and look at the plans of the new fire station, but that's an additional cost, obviously, for the church. In their, agreement that I have here, it says, if the fire pump doesn't work from the school and the church burns down, they can't sue the school. And I don't know how good this contract is legal-wise. I'm not a lawyer by any means. So we just need direction from you guys. If you want us to have Jeff Murphy contact the church, go in there, see if that's gonna affect the size of the fire pump or the cistern, based on fire load, and move forward that way.
So I think those are questions that we need to know. What will that increase the cost to us? Do you need a bigger system? Do you need to have bigger pipes? You know, what if we add them? We know we want this building on it, we want the museum on it, and we want the new fire station on it.
Why
What-
doesn't the church do that? I mean, that's really
Well,
their problem.
I think they pay the bill of what they're doing. They need to be,
Well, we don't know that they're gonna pay the bill for that.
yeah. They told me the other day they want in, but they're looking for guidance from us.
But will they pay to figure out what in would cost?
So if that's what you want, I will call him tomorrow and say, we want you to pay this, this, and that. So if you can give me a list of what the church would have to pay, and the board sanctions me to call the gentleman and say, this is what you're responsible to pay, we need to know if we need a larger system, we need to have them do a fire load on your building, we need to do these things, and this is the cost you're gonna incur right up front, without even knowing what the cost is gonna be to share with us.
Right, because the church may then decide to stay right where they are
Sure.
and deal with the issues should there be a problem 10 years from now. But in the meantime, they could anticipate that problem and start saving accordingly. Does that make sense?
Do you expect the church to pay a portion of the construction? So we have a new fire suppression system, right, for the fire station, for the library. That's in the budget at about $380,000.
I would envision not to pay for that, but part of the pipe to run to connect up. I would see part of that and then part of the yearly cost.
What if you go from a 20,000 gallon cistern to a 30,000 gallon cistern because of them?
Well,
That's a different story.
that's different, but based on what we were told before, the fire station has the bigger load, but yes.
I talked to Jeff yesterday, and he said that the apparatus bay at the fire station is the biggest fire load. What he doesn't know, and he'd have to go into the church to see the size piping in there and all that stuff, to see if the pressure needs to be higher from the pump to push the water all the way to the church.
So I think the difference is we're dealing with a 20-year-old system that does not have a generator backup,
And we don't have any paperwork on, apparently.
and that it's old. So we're gonna be going to a brand-new system and more or less saying, this is a brand-new system to support your building for your needs. So I personally think different. I think it's like driving the old car or driving the new car. If you're getting the new car and it's a cost to the town, then I think the share needs to be shared among the, and I agree with Phil. You know, if we're gonna put a new system in and we're gonna let people feed off it, I think they need to share some of the costs that the town's gonna incur.
I agree.
Bottom line is we need a guess from the engineering guy, what it's gonna cost to evaluate the church.
If the board's
Then
happy,
he can say the system's gonna cost X number of dollars more.
Which I don't think that would be that much money.
No.
I don't see how it's any money. That was just designed in 2012. I don't know what the variables are that are unknown to him. Someone sat down and put pen to paper and figured out all these calculations already. All of that building is done. All these buildings are
Correct, but you're going from the high school across Church Street to the church.
Pushing it
Now,
the other way.
now you're
I got that, but he doesn't need to go in that building. There's a file somewhere that just says, there's this many sprinkler heads, there's this is the, you know, the width of the pipe, this is what it is. I mean, I don't understand why he's juicing us for a visit and calculations on all that stuff. Absolutely, it's going from there to there, it's one thing. But the buildings haven't changed. The I've seen these sprinkler system calculations, they're all pretty standard and very
You may
rigorous.
be able to call the church and see if they have, you know, their blueprints of sprinkler.
Maybe they have the paperwork.
They can hand them the
That's-
paper.
that's-
Churches don't burn anyways.
Yeah, right.
So does the board want me to call them and tell them they need to incur the cost of this?
Yeah.
Meaning the cost of having this gentleman do the research?
Yeah. I do, I think so.
Is that good to go, or?
Yeah, we don't wanna pay for them to engineer for the church.
Again, I go back to the fact that you shouldn't have to do any engineering for the church. It's an 8-year-old building. I mean, all this should be on file somewhere, either at the state fire marshal's
Well, I agree with
office or.
that, but he's gonna have to sit down and figure out if the pump's gotta be bigger, he's gotta figure out piping size.
Yeah, and I feel that is a worthy thing for the church to be part of, you know, to run it up to them, yes, the church should be on the hook for that. But I don't think any of the buildings themselves have changed since these were installed. So none of that should be anything we're getting charged for, other than incorporating it with the new system.
Well, he has to check fire, it's not just the layout of the building, it's fire load, it's, you know, what do they have in their storage rooms?
They actually added a big addition since that was done.
Right, so that's one of the main reasons why they required a sprinkler system there is because anytime a place of assembly renovates more than 50% of their building, then you have to sprinkle the building if you change uses or whatever. So they obviously added on that large portion in the back, so that's why the sprinkler system was there. I can call Jeff Murphy today or tomorrow and ask him. I don't think it's gonna be much,
It's not a lot of money.
but
I guess we need to know what he knows, but you may want to point out to him, you shouldn't rattle his tin cup a little too hard, because this is, I mean,
Yeah, I don't think he's looking, this isn't gonna be a lot of money. This is,
no, but nothing's free at the same point. He has a business to run, so.
And the town shouldn't pay for the church's research.
Sure.
fair enough.
Right.
So I
So
go back?
yes, make the call.
Okay. Thank you. I will
Because
make
if
that
they
call.
said, no, we're gonna stay right where we are and take our chances down the road, that's fine. That's a whole nother ballgame.
Chief, just so you know, we can't give you a solid number until
Right.
Jeff and SFC had done their calculations, and adding the church, does it increase the overall cost estimate? I don't know, we don't know that right now.
I guess if he can get a budgetary number for us on what it's gonna take to get the final number, you know, what he needs to know.
Right.
But then the church's gonna decide to stay or go and take their chances down the road, that's all. It's not the end of the world,
They already suggested that they go the new route.
okay, but they don't know, they say that, but they don't know what it's gonna cost, and that may change everything.
Sure.
And as far as the timeline, what you said within the week, we need to decide whether they're gonna be in or
Yeah,
not.
I mean, we need to get something to Jeff pretty quick, within the next couple of weeks, to get him to start to work on it.
Yeah, I would say that we just need to, the members of this board and at least someone from the fire station building committee need to be available for a teleconference. If we get some answers, we can at least keep driving that train.
So for the board's purposes, they were told several years ago by Bill Seaman that they would be at some point needing to change out, and they have been preparing for that. The church has been, and I can't tell you any more than that because I don't know any put aside, but they have been preparing for making this switch for some time, I've been told.
So just a couple other details, now that it's kind of gone under the SMP, the architecture route, and Bowen, who's the construction management, right now it's kind of being looked at several different ways. That could be a fiberglass tank under the slab in one of the workrooms. It could be a separate building on the facility that will look very much like the admin piece. Same kind of siding. It'll, just be a little wooden structure somewhere on the site, but the fire suppression system will be either under the building, within the building, or on site pretty close to the building, so we can limit the piping and the connections to the backup generator and all that stuff. So that's the direction we're headed at this point. We'll just need some, as we just talked about, the clarification on the church. That was about it on that, right? The well, so the one of the things that we had talked about in this system, just so you know, the cistern, let's just say for the sake of discussion, is a 40,000 gallon cistern. And what we're hoping is we need 30,000 gallons for the fire suppression piece. We add 10,000 gallons or 5,000 gallons for the filling of the trucks. So we'll have the ability, you can't take the 30 and bleed it down and let it fill back up. So you need the minimum for whatever the fire suppression system is designed at. So let's just say 30. We add 10,000 gallons. That'll allow us to fill the engines, the tanker, right from that.
With clean water.
With clean water. So that will be refilled with the well through a filtration system, because that'll eliminate the whole contamination either way, if the well goes driven or the well goes dug.
So that's also gonna change the size of a pump that you need to pump the water from there into one of the fire trucks.
So there'll probably be a secondary pump, not use the fire suppression pump, and it's, a simple, 2 horsepower, so we fill it in 20 minutes and something like that, versus, a 4-inch line off the fire suppression pump. That's the direction we're going. Okay? That's all I had, but Mr. Hartway, so the site engineer checked with the state of New Hampshire. He was a little worried that this well might be considered a public water supply, which it will not be. That's a good thing, and that would the demand there was you need more than 60 days a year with 25 people at the site. It's likely we won't have that, so it'll just be more like a residential water supply. So we don't need to qualify that as a.
Does that take into consideration people using bathrooms and flushing toilets? So then we do not want to make it a public water supply by allowing the public to use bathrooms. Is that correct?
You can allow them to use the bathrooms, you just wouldn't be able to distribute water in a shortage or.
Portable.
Right. It will be potable for the occupants of the building, just not given to the public. If you guys wanna look into that, it's testing, it's, monthly testing, yearly testing, it's not a fun
It's every
situation.
quarter, right?
What?
It's every quarter, right?
I'm not sure what.
It is every quarter, and you have different parameters for your protective radius around the well.
Right.
So if you go with a public water supply, you might have a well out in the middle of plains.
Yeah,
We did it for the daycare, and it was a nightmare, because it's all different tests every month. One test was $6,000. Every 2 years, I think, it's a whole series of tests. You have to hire a well company to do it.
We're not gonna put a sign out that says public restrooms. That's really the difference. I mean, it's not to say someone would visit the station and need to go, they're gonna use the bathroom, it's not a big deal, but you're not gonna put a sign out and advertise it. You might have a special event, like your open house. Those are not there are exceptions to the rule.
Well, I think he said septic's not the issue, it's just we can't use the water for other things.
Right.
Difference between a regular water system, well, and a public water, is the number of permanent employees. How many? I think the numbers are, it's gotta be less than 25 people to be, and you can't exceed that more than 40 or 60 days a year. So if you have your occasional ham and bean supper there, you can do that, as long as you don't have 40 or 50 of them in a year. Or if we have an extended storm, and that becomes EOC, and we've got 25 people, if there are 25 extra people there for a 10-day period, that doesn't put us over the parameters of being a public water supply. It's acceptable. And it's a lot cheaper. You protect, again, your protective radius, how many septic systems, how far away. All those things change when you go from a regular water supply to a public water supply. This building we're in now used to have a public water supply. And we used to pay quarterly and all kinds of tests, and the, Larry Middlemas, at the time, the health officer, basically discontinued that because this building was not necessary for a public water supply because of the number of employees and the usage. So if you can get away from that public water supply, I would recommend that you do that. The other thing, we all done on the well thing? The other thing that's an issue with that site is the PFOAs. Dave Alwine from Stantec was hired to do a report. It was due last January. State still hasn't seen the report. It's coming up on June. Sorry, Phil, I just found this out last week. I should have given you a heads up. My apologies. Something slipped my mind again. So we need to, I don't know where that was left. I mean, we talked about hiring a different group to come in and look at it, lawyers, but the state is still looking for that report from last January. Actually, it was extended. It was supposed to be done by the end of last year, so January 1st.
I thought he told us he had done it.
Well, according to the state DS, they're still waiting for it, and it's not posted on the state webpage. Give me a second, I'll come up with the person that I talked to up there, but she's the one that's been the contact.
Kate
Emma. Yeah. So that's a big question. They don't see a problem. The only recommendation from the state DS is we need to probably, if we're going to be trucking any soil off the property, we need to test the soil to make sure that we didn't happen to dig up a hot spot and now we're trucking the soils off. I think there's going to be basically a neutral site. We actually might be importing dirt, not exporting dirt, but it's just something we have to monitor. That's their recommendation. From their perspective, build your fire station. Just be careful about exporting soils off-site because you don't want to contaminate another site.
And I was on the conference call with Rich. Emma did say that the geotesting borings that they do, we can use those to test for PFOAs. But she did say that if we're not taking any soil off-site, then we don't need to do anything.
Yeah. So you guys approved a contract to do some geoengineering for the building to make sure that the soils, what kind of footings have to be. So the recommendation is those 5 wells, we actually do PFOA tests on the soil. Because those will be on the 4 corners of the building and the center of the building, I'm sure. And that'll give you a good handle. I'm pretty sure you'll find nothing there because that's not where the fire department used to practice their foam.
If that's what costs.
If that's what costs.
That's all I got.
Really? That's all?
Chuck does.
A couple of things. One is you've got the bond agreement, or you may not have it yet, but you will have it soon, Susan.
Orange file.
And there's apparently 2 items there. There's the bond agreement, which in and of itself is fairly simple, and the selectmen and 2 other people sign it. The other piece of paper is a certificate of a vote, but we're not quite sure whether you actually have to have a meeting on that and vote on each resolve, or you just sign the letter. So, Susan, when you look at that, we may
I
have...
thought it was just that they're meeting today, and she will attest to the fact that they've met on the bond.
Okay, well, that's what I thought too, but somebody else had done
But I
that, so,
understand it.
whatever. And the only note on there, as you see it, is that it is date sensitive, so the sooner we get it done and back in, we're covered. They have written up the percentage as a maximum of 3%, because they're not quite sure yet what it will be, but it will not be more than 3%. Still anticipating, my last conversation last week with Jill was that it's probably still going to be the 2.5% or less that we talked about, but it definitely won't be more than 3%, which is still a good rate. And it doesn't, there's no anticipation that they won't go through. I mean, they've got to this point here. I think July 14th is the date that they set the rate. And then the bond council will finish up the paperwork with that. So that really is the only thing there. The first principal payment, which is $150,000 for the next 20 years, is due on August 15th of 2021. So there is some time to take care of that.
15 months away from the first payment?
No. Good try, though. Interest is due February 15th, 2021, which is around $36,000. So that's the first.
It's worth a
That's
shot.
a good try, yeah. That's the first payment, and then the principal itself, and then every year thereafter, it's the same dates. So that's really, I think, all I have on that. It's kind of, it's all in there. That's just an update. And the only other thing I have is the fees, application fees, permits, et cetera, that the town normally would charge someone if they were building a new building. And I know in the past we've done that, is to get those fees waived by the town. Understanding that if Robert is looking at something as a plumbing inspector or something and isn't sure of himself as to what to do, and he has to hire an outside source to come in and do it, which I know they've done it with the bigger buildings in the school and those things, that certainly that would be something that, you know, we would have to pay for. But there's just general, the building fee, the plumbing fee, the electrical fee, we'd like to get those waived if we could. And application, I think the planning board's really what we're, the only place we'd be coming in for under that.
It's going to cost us more to put it in one pocket and take it out and put it in the other pocket.
So, and I don't know, I mean, that can be just, we can just understand that. I mean, unless you want
We'll
something.
make a motion, assuming that's what the chairman wants.
Chuck, the only question I had is, have you been relaying that information to the trustees of the trust fund?
Relaying that information, about what?
As far as the timeline for the bond,
Have not.
I think,
Would you like me to? I just.
yeah, if you
I
could,
didn't-
because I think if our plan is to do, what they're looking for is a timeline when they're gonna need to produce money for us, and, because they need to let the advisors know so that they have more liquidity
Yep.
with our funds,
Cash
so,
flow,
yeah.
cash flow,
So if it's not gonna be until August of next year or something, that allows us more time to get the most bang for our buck.
I will get a hold of them and fill them in with that. Yep. Yep, no problem. That's it.
You have a motion, Ally?
Yes, I move that we waive the traditional building inspection fees for the construction of the fire station.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Discussion. The only discussion I would have is our electrical and plumbing inspector are paid on a per diem. They're paid by the inspection, and they still will be paid by the inspection, so we just need to know where that money is gonna come from, be it from the fire station committee or just from the salary line item.
Well, I think,
I would say the fire committee, only because you might, as someone said about, you might need specialized services beyond the capabilities of our local inspectors, and that would come from the building fund anyways. It's still our money, no matter how you look at it, so I would say that that would come out of the fire building fund.
Well, the specialty amount would, but the basic,
Waiving the regular fees.
okay, well, I thought that's what he was,
But they get paid, they're paid.
Yeah, they're paid, you know, if they go out and do an inspection,
Inspection,
they get paid. That's how they get compensated for their efforts.
We can check with Bowen and Anthony, but I'm pretty sure, I would assume they have some sort of fee structure in there in
Yeah,
our budget.
I would imagine they do, yeah.
Now, we've just done that with the school before, and it's just kind of hanging out there that who's
No.
paying for that.
I think
Well,
it should come from the fire fund, to be honest.
I would say that that's the whole point of asking, do we waive the permit? If it's $50 or $100 or $200 to go out.
Permits are different than the fees that we pay the,
Okay, so that,
it's
Two
a
of the
different fee
inspectors are
structure,
subcontracted.
it's different
okay,
fees.
So like Robert and Peter
That,
are
you know,
salaried, but electrical and plumbing are just, when there's an inspection, that's when they get
It's
paid.
just different.
So we need to,
They don't work for the town, they're subcontractors for the town.
Correct.
normally the person who's building the house pays the fees, is
I'm
what,
sure we can absorb that in our budget, I understand.
all right.
but it's not a huge thing, just want to make sure it's covered.
100%.
Okay.
Just,
Fruit, I have no idea. Fruit.
This is nothing.
I wore my good shirt today.
He's a good Yankee.
Okay, further discussion. We'll call vote, please.
Alessio,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Coombs,
Yes.
St. James.
Yes.
Wilson.
Abstain, so I didn't hear the conversation.
Anything else? I don't want to act like I'm poo-pooing SFC. I just, if we've already paid for something once, be it 25 years ago or whatever, I don't think we should have to pay for it
I'm
again.
gonna make him find that paper.
That would be awesome.
I'll give you a copy.
Thank you.
Check with the church, they may even
I'll check
have,
with the school as well, because
and the school,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure they have more than just that piece of paper, but
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you, Susan.
Okay.
See you later. Oh.
Okay, next up, we have Garrett Miller, R-E-P-F-P-O-P-P, but E-F-R, Deferred Compensation
XYZ.
Option.
He is here joining via Zoom. I'm going to unmute him.
Maybe not.
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Hello, how are you?
Hey Garrett, this is Phil Coombs, the chairman of the Kingston Select Board. You are on.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me today. And we affectionately call it PF Pope. I know it's hard to spell out the PFPOPE. I'm not sure who named it. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to give you just a brief overview of the plan and when it started, and then let you ask whatever questions or concerns you may have.
That would be great.
So PF Pope was started in 1999 by a group of firefighters in the state of New Hampshire, and the mission was to provide a retirement option for public employees that was both, I don't want to say small, but low cost, high performance, and self-directed something, and had better terms than your traditional IRA guidelines. So we started a 457 plan, and if you're not familiar, the 457 plan has a higher contribution limit annually. This year it's $19,500, and more importantly, it allows the participant to draw upon it without penalty as soon as they retire, regardless of age. The normal retirement age per the plan is 45 following Group 2 New Hampshire retirement system. But as soon as you terminate employment, it lets you access that money without penalty. So the goal and the mission was to create this plan and to keep the expense side of it as low as possible while providing the best performance. The way we've done that is by creating this participant-driven investment committee. So each municipality that is a sponsor of the PF Pope plan has a seat at the table, and the members are truly our volunteers and participants of the plan, They're the ones that hear the advice of the advisor, who is paid by the PF Pope plan itself. And then they make the decisions without any bias to fee kickbacks or anything else. They are only driven by the desire to see it perform well for themselves and the other participants. There's no incentive otherwise. So they meet quarterly to look at the plan as a whole and the 18 funds that are on the platform, along with, there's also 5 model funds that were created about 10 years ago to provide the participants, if they don't want to select individual funds on their own, 5 different levels of risk as a model. So we look at those quarterly with an investment committee, and they make the decision to keep the funds, change the funds, and they're all based on an investment policy guideline, which would be that the fund performs in the top 50% of its global category, and then its expense ratio is in the bottom 50% of that same fund matchup. So if it was a mid-cap fund, it would have to outperform better than 50% of the other mid-caps while having an expense ratio less than that. And again, it goes back to our mission, which is to provide this at as low of a cost to the participant. We're not in this to make money, just to support the program and to build it and grow it and make it better for the participant. We do have a staff advisor. His name is Chuck Humphreys. We have an agreement with him. Every participant has the right to call him whenever they'd like to or email him, and he provides advice directly to him. The PF Pope plan itself does not provide any advice to participants. We can't legally do that, but it is paid for by the PF Pope, by the expenses garnered by PF Pope. It's the same advisor that sits and advises the investment committee. The only cost of the plan to the employer is the implementation of the payroll deduction slot. We try to make it as painless as possible, so that all you're doing is submitting that check or ACH push or pull, or however you decide to do it, to the trust. We never actually handle the money. It goes directly to the trust and is invested in the name of the participant. So we try to make that as simple as possible for the employer. And then as the service provider, PF Pope itself and myself, we facilitate the documentation for new enrollments, for plan disbursements, loans if you decide to adopt a loan policy, and we can talk about that in a few minutes. Emergency distributions for financial hardship, which is we just follow the IRS 457 guideline. There's a whole flow sheet. So if somebody had a true hardship, they would be able to take a withdrawal from their funds prior to retirement. But that's a very restricted program. And it's meant to be that way to protect the retirement money. We have a third-party trust that handles all the money. They're Mid-Atlantic Trust Capital. So the money goes from the employer to Mid-Atlantic and then is invested seconds later, really. It goes in and out of the fund so fast. But we never handle the money at all, and that's the way we want it to be. As the plan grows, currently we're at about 455 participants across 18 municipalities. As the plan grows, we're up to roughly 25 million under management. We continue to try and cut the costs for the participant. So the way the cost structure works is there's an 8 basis point per month fee assessed to the balance of the fund, total of a 1% fee per year. And that money is used to pay the trust company, the record keeper, all the marketing administration costs, and the PIA, or the investment advisor for the plan, which is accessible by all participants. As we grow, we'll continue to make that fee smaller, because we'll have the ability to do that, along with try and improve the education that we offer to the participant. We're currently rolling out a new website, which should be online in July, which will actually provide investor guidelines, education, online virtual classes for retirement planning for any of the participants. That's PF Pope in a nutshell. What questions can I answer for the board?
Garrett, if I could ask, this is Kevin St. James. It was mentioned that we already have a 457 plan. why would we get another one? So I can't remember what our current is, Vega or,
I,
what is it?
I,
Valak?
Okay, Valak.
Yeah.
So can you compare Valak to that one, or cost-wise, or whatever?
I don't have the direct expenses for Valak. I don't know what their management fee or their back-end fees on the mutual funds are. But what I can tell you is that when I've looked at the other competitive funds out there, ICMA, Empower, and I've seen Valak go by, I don't have their exact numbers. They're usually a lot higher on the fund expense ratio. Our average fund expense ratio is less than 1, and they're usually 1.56 to 2, along with a 5.5% management fee on top of that, with fees for distributions, for loan processing. So the difference really would be that we charge the one management fee, and out of that we pay all of the distribution fees, the loan management fees. Everything comes out of that one single fee. It's a lot more transparent than some of the other competitors.
Okay, and then the only other question was the attorney looked at it, and our finance director, is she on the line for this?
I invited her, she's not here right now.
Find that interesting. But anyways, she had a concern with the only thing that was put on the employer was we would have to adopt a loan program if one of the employees wanted to do.
Sure. So,
Oh, something happened, Garrett.
Is he still there?
Yeah, he's still here. Can't hear him.
Garrett, we lost your voice.
If only we had an AV guy present in the town hall to help us.
how about now?
Here?
Can you hear me?
Director.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, he's back.
I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I'd much rather have a personal touch here. So the loan policy is something that is adopted by the employer. So it is at the option of the town of Kingston, whether they allow their participants to take a loan against their own funds. The loan program, if it's adopted, would allow a participant to take a loan against their own balance up to 50% of their market value at the day they take the loan. And it's traditionally paid back to themselves over a 5-year period at the current market interest rate, which is set by our record keeper. As of last week, it was 3.5%. If you were to adopt the loan policy, what happens is when someone processes a loan, they would come to you with a signed request for a payment or withholdings from their paycheck post-tax to be paid against that loan for the term. And that's, again, it's completely at the discretion of the municipality. Some do it and some don't.
And this is for one employee, this particular plan?
I don't know. I'm hoping it's for more than one.
Currently, I would answer your question is, there's one person that just started here that carried this plan. He's had it for several different employers, and he's the one that brought it to my attention. That's why Garrett's here. But to me, it is a better mousetrap, and it would be nice to offer it to our employees should they want to. It's just another option that right now, currently, under Cindy, no one participates in that other plan. Whether it's because they don't like
No
it.
reason to bring this one on board then.
What?
There's no reason to bring this particular one on board. And if the town wants to consider a pension plan or retirement plan for all its employees, I think that's one thing. But to
This does. Anyone could.
But we're in the middle of a pandemic, and you want to start a new benefit? I don't know.
No, it's not a benefit. This is strictly voluntary. It's not. It costs the town.
It's going to cost the town. Don't tell me everything costs. Don't tell me it doesn't cost. He's already told us there's definitely admin cost. That doesn't even go into whether or not the employee can borrow against it. I'm not saying this is a bad plan, I'm saying I'm not in favor of implementing a retirement plan for one individual when there are others that probably might benefit. And we don't have the time right now to really do the homework to investigate other options. And PF Pope may not necessarily be the best option.
Well, let me ask, Garrett, what is the cost compared to any other plan? Are we paying for this, for the whatever the other plan is? Or what is the cost to the town?
What is the cost?
What is the cost?
The cost to the town is the administrative portion of adding that one payroll deduction to the paycheck.
So what is that?
No one has ever quantified it. It's,
He's saying just for like Cindy's time to
Set it
you know,
up
set it up.
and send it out and so forth. I don't know.
So, Chief Pellerin.
So, I myself would be interested in this plan. But basically, what Garrett is saying is that while Cindy's sitting at her desk, for her to type in a direct deposit account to go to PF Pope is what is gonna cost the town. So just like I can have up to 3 accounts, I believe, that after you cut me a paycheck, I can get that deposited into different accounts. So that's there's no cost to the town. So my question is, after you cut me a check, why will you not allow me to do what I want to do with it? If it doesn't cost the town a cent, and if I borrow from my own money from a retirement account at 50%, at fair market value, then in my eyes it shouldn't be an issue. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. It has nothing to do with a special retirement account that's only for police and fire. It's for any town employee. So I think it's a benefit and just an option for other town employees. This one employee that does have it is one of mine, but if you okay this to happen at no cost to the town, then I will be signing up for it, and I have at least one other employee. And I know the email went to Chief Briggs and to Rich. I don't know how his guys feel about it. The email about today and Garrett being online.
Is PF Pope a private company?
That I don't know.
What is PF Pope? Is it an investment house? Is it,
PF Pope is incorporated in the state of New Hampshire. It's a private company. It's part of a not-for-profit. It's just like Valic and Power and the rest of them. We have the same basic structure. The difference is we're small, I guess is the way I want to say it, in the sense that our goal is to stay small forever, so you have good customer service. You're dealing directly with me and with the board if ever it came to it, but basically me as the director of administration. We don't have a big call center. We're very much personalized in our offering.
so it's really just a private corporation that's formed to handle investments for town employees?
And it's for municipal employees across the state, and really across the nation. We keep it very local to the state of New Hampshire. And one thing I wasn't clear on, I hope makes sense, is this is, if you were to adopt it, it's eligible to any employee of the town of Kingston, not just police or firefighters. It's any public municipally paid employee, even to the extent of independent contractors, depending on their agreement with the town.
So, are there any other questions? Garrett, thank you very much. I think I have all the information I need now. I think does everybody have the information they need now? Oh, we got them on the line? But, I believe our next meeting is not this Monday, but the following.
Correct.
So we should have an answer for you in approximately 2 weeks.
Great. If I can be of assistance, let me know.
And yeah, if we have any further questions, we'll shoot you an email and follow up from there.
Excellent.
Thank you again for your time.
Likewise, thank you.
Have a good day. I'd be interested in getting more out to the departments to see what the interest level is you know, if you can pull your guys and see who specifically is interested, Don, we can relay that to Rich. I personally, I don't think this hurts the town. Offering more to the employees at no cost to us isn't a bad thing. But I think everybody should take the time to do their own research on this now that we've gotten the word from the horse's mouth here. And if we have any more questions, and then we can revisit this at the following meeting. Does that work? Or?
Is this like a retirement plan, basically, is what it is?
It is a private retirement plan. It's me or any town employee does their own thing. And the money just comes out of their check and goes to that fund.
Is it sponsored by another union?
No, it's a private, non-profit, set up as PF. It's no different than, you know, going to a Fidelity person to set up an account.
It's not Teamsters or anything
No,
like that?
absolutely not. It is a private, non-profit, that's what he said. And what I would say is that anyone, if you want, I will give you Garrett's number to ask a question, or Susan has a contact.
I'll look into PF.
And then the other...
I don't know. I'm not objecting to the employees having an opportunity to invest. I absolutely am all in favor of that. And that was the first I heard that you, Chief, were interested, that there may be others in your department. I don't have a real problem with that at all. I was under the impression that it was union sponsored. And I have a problem opening the doors for unions.
I don't blame you. What I would say is the difference too between this or that one and our employees is they never had a chance to get educated on what this is for them. Even this board didn't even know what it is. And this person or PF Pope themselves would come in and explain and hold a class to see, because to be honest, our work is getting older. When that was set up, I don't even know when that was, but let's say it's 5-10 years ago, the highway guys weren't even thinking of retirement. I think they're all looking at retirement now.
But if you think it's gonna cost us nothing, think again.
Well, it's gonna cost the employee if it's gonna cost anything.
Okay.
The only cost would be the administration of it, which is a keystroke or developing a loan.
Like Graham said, if we're allowing them to deposit into 3 accounts now, there's no difference in
That's true.
depositing into that.
I totally agree with you.
I mean, if you look at our payroll, we have
Yeah.
people that put it into 3
Yeah.
or 4
Yeah.
accounts.
Okay.
No different if someone gets their pay attached, then he has to pay that anyways, you know, so.
Right, that's true, that's true.
I think the biggest thing is for everybody to take the time, do their own research before the next meeting, and then we can address it at
Take a
that
vote.
time.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
Okay, with that being said, public comment. Seeing no public, go on to old business. The Gopher Grant.
Go for grant.
You have a big packet, the agreement there, and it's in your folder.
Okay.
There's lots of places to sign an initial, and that we're waiting on some numbers from the fire department. So the other piece of it is the request for reimbursement, which isn't ready yet. I'm hoping I can meet with you on Friday with that to get one more signature. But this is the main agreement, so if you want to take it with you or, you know, look it over, but I've put in all the dates.
This is not a Caddyshack thing with a little guy on the ground?
Gopher Man.
Exactly.
So, this needs 3 signatures and.
No, just you. Remember, we agreed to make you the signer, so it was a choice whether we wanted.
You want it, does he have to be authorized?
We did
We
that
did
in
that
the
the
last.
last meeting.
Okay.
So you're all set to go if you just want to take your time and look at it. It's just a lot of signing. And the other part, like I said, is the expenses that we've come up with so far with the library, fire department, and town buildings. Basically for cleaning. At this point, this is just for March and April. And we'll have another round that's due in July. So,
Okay, so this is just requesting the funds from March and April that we've already incurred expenses on.
yes,
Reimbursed, right.
that would be reimbursed.
All right,
For
I will spare everybody having to sit here while I sign that, so.
Thank you.
Door Road, I have not heard back from the attorney regarding that. In his defense, I did not get it to him until more recently. So, but I did get a copy of the settlement stipulation
Yeah.
from Superior Court, so that will help speed that along.
lost. It's the only thing I get to say about
It's
that.
just a suboptimal result for the town. Keep it positive.
Okay, suboptimal, that's a good phrase.
So that's where we're at with that. Anything further on that, Susan, or?
No, I haven't, I just copied it for everybody.
The COVID-19 policy documents for reopening the town buildings, everybody should have copies of those in there. This is,
Those came from the county, and I just like changed the name. It needs to be looked over and see if you wanna use it. The other part is the sign-in sheet. Personally, I don't see how that's exactly gonna work in the town, but,
What didn't you like about it?
well, it's asking everyone to record their temperature and answer all those questions, and, you know, the employees, it wouldn't be a big deal to just kind of fill it in every day, but if you want every person that walks in the building to do that, then you've got them going into the kitchen, you've got them handling a pen, and nobody's gonna stand there and make sure everybody does it. I guess that's my problem, you know, who's gonna make sure that gets done?
Can I open up something here for a minute? So I think the board needs to look at how we see opening up the building. I see it two ways. We talked about electronically letting people in, talking to them from the outside, buzzing them in. Or you leave the doors open. We've already hung signs outside that said mask required, or you could hang another one, no mask, no service. And when we have the new room done there, that everybody would be able to stay where they are and not go out and greet and meet people. I think that's where we have the largest exposure now, is having our employees go out, let every person in the world in, let them follow them in, let the next person in all day long. So it's taking them as much time to go out and talk to the people and letting them in and letting them out and so on and so forth, versus we either leave the back door open, make sure everybody wears a mask when they come in, that takes care of the 6 feet social distancing issue, or we can do 2 types of safety, one for this and one for building safety, and have that phone system we discussed about, you know, calling whoever they're gonna call from the outside of the building. That person can see them out there and they buzz them in individually. But I think either way we do it, if we do leaving the door open, making everyone wear a mask, or buzzing them in, that's much safer for our employees not to have that interaction with every person that comes in. So personally, I have an issue with someone going out and taking someone's temperature and doing all of that stuff, because again, you're exposing your employees to all of the people every day of the week. That's my own personal thing. So I think you've got to look at, what do we see about opening these buildings? Do we want to leave the doors open? You're mandated to wear a mask and go into the building where you're gonna go? Or do we want to make it more secure, especially eventually if this thing comes back around at us again? And we too need a new phone system based upon what we're being told, the age of the one we've got that's having issues, I guess. So do we want to invest in that phone system and the buzzer system so they can see who's out there, the person calls from the outside, and they buzz them into where they're going? I did speak with Tammy, I spoke to everyone downstairs, I talked to Ellen. And for Ellen, she was good with being able to see them in either one of the offices, being able to speak with them, being able to buzz them in, let them in through the back door, as long as she could let them out the front door. Not an issue, because you're controlling who's coming in, where they're going, and so on and so forth. So I think the board needs to make that decision what we want to do and how we expect to keep the public and especially our employees safe if this thing now and if this thing comes around back at us, which they're all saying it's going to come back at us.
For this chart, I would think this is for the employees, not visitors per se, because you're stuck in an office with your fellow employee, and they may not know they're running a temp. So I would say that is for employees, not visitors.
Internal.
Internal only, correct.
We do that every day, 2 or 3 times a day with employees at the police
At the
department.
station?
Yes, we do. Yep.
So you have a thermometer there, and then just each person takes their own temperature. and
Yep, they have,
answers the
Rich actually bought them. They were the regular units that everyone else uses.
questions. The kind that's on the
Yeah, yeah. I have a question. So when are we anticipating the glass being done for that new?
They're making it today, and tomorrow they should be installing for the area where Tori's gonna go. So that, they're gonna put the countertop on, that should be up and ready to go. And I'm just waiting for the board to give some marching orders on what they want to do with the flooring. And Graham and I, are going to be going to Boston again to measure out desks. And so, some different ideas. We spoke about actually some of the file cabinets that aren't being used. I spoke to Susan about them. I talked to Rich. We had a discussion downstairs that we should take some of those that are not in use every day of the week, that maybe once a week, once a month, whatever, and put them up here. Put the ones up here, put a row in where Tori's gonna go, leave the rest on that other wall, and you can put additional desks on based upon the layout now. So that, there's a number of different things that we can do different, that we've been looking at.
So I guess I asked the glass question because if the only point of interaction with the customer is gonna be at those desks with dividers, do we even need a mask policy? If there's entrance into the offices,
You got customers passing each other.
Yeah, you get the customers, that's why you need them. You wouldn't need them for us. You wouldn't need them for the employees, but you have to mandate because of the width of the hall and how many people would be in there.
And hopefully the mask policy is a temporary thing, that we can do away with that
Well,
eventually.
in New Hampshire, it's not a mandate.
No, but we could mandate for the sake of our employees that you have to come into this town hall.
We've done that.
well, yeah, and I think that's the point though, is the width of that hall doesn't allow you to social
That's
distance enough to
correct.
stay
That
away
is
from each
correct.
other, so I think that's prudent, but I think once we have the glass up there, and regardless, anybody who has to enter one of the offices, be it finance or selectmen or whatever, they have to have a mask on to enter one of those. But I think we could be covering 90% of our day-to-day interactions via that counter space. But I agree with Kevin, the sheet is just for our employees, is just a monitoring thing to make sure that we're
So
keeping an
not
eye on that.
no visitor screen.
But I think the supervisor, Tammy, or who's the supervisor? Is it Susan or Cindy on the other side has to acknowledge it because you have to have a little experience behind it. So yeah, I went to Massachusetts to get takeout at 110 Grill. That doesn't make me the travel restriction. Or you have to have more than one symptom. I just hope they would understand, but also keep it in mind. That's all.
Well, I think it's easier amongst our employees because no one's gonna wanna get anybody else sick. I mean, we're pretty close-knit group.
You say that, but we had an employee that came in with a temperature of 102. She was sick the day before and stayed home, but came in to the nursing home and she had a temperature of 102.
You had an employee, not us.
I know, but it's like, and then her boss is complaining. It's like, it's like your employee came in with a temperature. So that's how it got caught. It was only because we did that.
Other than that, you spread it through the whole place.
Yeah.
We've talked about this for a long time, and I think it's time to make some decisions. And I'm leaning towards updating the phone system with a buzzer system, so we can, not only through this virus, but in the future, we can safeguard our employees. It allows somebody to be here alone if they know the person coming in, they feel safe. There's a lot of things.
So would that mean that you can't get in unless you buzz in?
That's absolutely. Or you have a key. Like we could get in with a key. That means that any customers that are coming in would have to be buzzed in.
But they do spend a lot of time now letting person out, then they get back
No,
to
that's
bed.
like the next person comes.
I would agree, but I think we gotta get 3 bids. It has to do with, it's over
We've
5,000.
got 3 bids on that.
We do?
Yeah.
For the phones? No.
You got Kent? I thought you got one from Reinhold, didn't you?
No, he was gonna put the electric latches in. So we can do that, we can put that out, if that's the way the board wants to go. This was just an idea. I mean, you get a couple of different ways to go. I mean, for now, I would get the glass glass in place, and you can follow that, making sure they mask up until we get, it's gonna take a while to get the system, get it in place, so we can still open with making people mask up, right? I mean, I would wanna speak to Tammy to see what her thoughts were
She's gonna be coming up.
on how that would work for her with the people. I mean, how do we get them to self-distance? I mean, we can't put someone there in the police, it's gonna be too expensive.
Right.
So we could put the things in the hallway, the stickers on the floor, we could do a number of different things. But they're looking for direction from the board as to what we wanna do. I think you've got either open the door up and tell them to wear masks, or we go to this system.
And right now, we have the money that Rick says we'll have no trouble getting this system paid for under that plan. We already have that money.
I think the bigger thing though is we do need to get 3 quotes on that because that's
That's
money that's way outside of
I'm
our
fine with
control.
that.
They're gonna follow up on
I'm
that.
fine
for
with
sure.
that, but I think it's time we get moving on it and stop talking about it.
Yep.
So does the board want me to get 2 additional quotes, or, I didn't know which way you wanted
Which
to go.
way do you
Just go with the RFP,
Motion.
instead of just calling and, I don't know.
Well,
What's our
I-
policy
Yes.
for over five? What is our policy for 5,000 versus, what's the next step?
We're talking 10, 15,000 a
Yeah,
year.
I thought it was 10,000, but.
I think if we can call and get 2 other
Sure.
bids and
I wasn't just saying follow-up policy, that's all.
I'll make a motion that we proceed with the phone system and the electronic door opener. Picture of the person outside
Outside phone.
to control it, and we get 3 bids and then make a decision, hopefully by next meeting on those bids and proceed with the installation.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Further discussion.
So we're gonna have video, outside phone, and be able to communicate with that person on the outside.
And a
And
buzzer
upgrade the
control.
phone
and a-
system.
and a
Have
buzzer.
a real phone system going, right?
I'm sorry?
That includes a real phone system.
Yes, that would replace every phone in this building,
Amen.
because the intent of that is that if that person gets to the back door and there's a waterproof phone there, they call Ellen, you know, whether it's welfare or planning board or Susan or whoever, they're gonna be able to communicate right to them.
Not only that, but people calling in will have an easier time getting from office to office.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's awful now, yeah, it is.
Okay, so
Okay,
further questions on the phone system? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
St. James?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll get 3 additional quotes.
With regards to opening the town hall, how do we want to approach that? Because, again, like I said, our points of interaction will have glass covering, we're mandating a mask. I think we need to pick a date when we're gonna open the town hall.
I think before we do that, we need to talk about the flooring.
Yeah,
Because we've
yeah.
gotta finish what we're doing down there before we open.
So, Rich asked me to bring this up, so, we had the flooring guy come in.
Yep.
They were talking about, originally we talked about having the tile in the big room, and then they decided that it would probably be best to put the same stuff that's in Cindy's office all the way through the entire, side over there.
What was the basis for that?
Based upon wear and tear and how to take care of it, and so he and
The floor guy?
no, who was he talking to about it? Who
What-
was it with?
What was that?
To not do the tiles, but to do the full
The wood
wood stuff.
and the assessor.
Yeah, one of the things why was, it needs so much, in the big room, needs so much, floor leveler and all of that kind of stuff, by the time they got it up to speed with the regular little tiles, that this has more forgiveness in it, this other stuff, versus the square tiles is what my understanding was,
So now the thought's to run the wood all the way?
all the way through it. Because of the cost of preparing the floor for the tiles versus this stuff that you can just lay down, it has more forgiveness, he said.
The floor now, Phil was gonna take a fill layer of the liquid mortar to level it out before they could tile. It was gonna take grinding to get all the humps out of it, so they figured that doing all that between the time and the cost.
So is this wood, this faux wood stuff that we put in Cindy's office, is that supposed to be more resilient than VCT or?
Life of it's probably less
Okay.
overall.
But it's easy to maintain, right?
Yeah, it's gotta be maintained. I mean,
So
my,
is it,
my original thoughts was to keep the tile out where the inspectors are when it's becoming dirty and, you know, been to job sites and stuff and do the wood and the other. And I just heard this about running wood all the way.
yeah, so Tom and Rich had quite a conversation about, you know, how much it was gonna cost with a floor guy and maintenance and this and that. The only place they'd be using a smaller tile would be to fill in front of where the Tory's gonna be, to match in with the hallway. So once the floor gets down, we talked about moving stuff now, moving files and those types of things. Graham and I are going to go to Boston, and Rich is gonna go with us as well. We're looking at smaller L-shaped desks and newer ones that are out there to have shipped to us. They're doing that, the beginning of July, isn't that what he told us, the beginning of July? Where he's gonna be shipping a lot of, furniture for the fire department's new building, and shipping a lot of furniture here for us here. So I think by the time we get the flooring in and everything all done and ready to go, I mean, you could technically open up once the floor is down, and we could leave the old desks out. We spoke about putting some of these tables, like an L shape, in where the new tables are gonna go. So Rich doesn't have to move old stuff in, out, move it back in, move it over there. So if we could do these temporarily until we get the new stuff in July, then you could start sooner.
Do we have enough of these to do that?
Okay. So, so as soon as the floor goes down, my understanding was this week, the glass in Tory's office is gonna be up. I know Tom's gotta do some patching and painting a little bit here and there. But other than that, it should be ready to go.
So when's the floor going in?
I'm sorry,
When is the floor going in?
We haven't voted on
Oh,
it.
okay,
they haven't voted, so.
okay.
And are we gonna try to do the phone system before we open?
I don't think there'll be time to
I
do
think we'll
that.
make that.
I think that will have to come in after. I think
We don't know, we haven't got the time factor from the guys yet.
correct. So I think we'll get 2 more bids on that. I can bring it back to the board, but at least if you leave the doors open and make them come in with masks, so it's not exposing, and then add this to it later, so we can then lock it down? Does that sound like?
I like the no mask, no service sign. I think that says it all.
So we can hang one from the ceiling as they walk in the second door. I put that one on the front and the back door that we talked about, mask required.
Yep.
And we'll hang a second one from the ceiling, no mask, no service. And then once we get the new system in, for the buzzer and the phone, we can then go back to that system if that's what you want to do.
Well, we've got a meeting in a week and a half, so why don't we wait till that meeting and set an opening date at that point?
So we should know by the carpet by then.
Yeah.
right?
We should know everything by then.
My only concern on the files, those are all locking?
Yes,
Okay.
we talked about that this afternoon. We talked
Yeah, I
about.
just wanna make sure that someone can't just come in here and screw around.
Yeah, we talked about, so we can take, I mean, actually, by looking at it and using that firewall and putting half of Tory stuff in there, that only leave a half in the big room, and there's probably 5 to 6 cabinets we can put up here. So we can, I mean, we can lay that out pretty well in that big room before we're done.
Now, while we're talking about opening, what are we gonna do with meetings? Any plans or thoughts on restarting meetings? Are we still in a hold pattern? I mean, mainly planning boards, what I'm thinking about.
I mean, from what I understood, the planning board has already set up their schedule that they're gonna roll with for June.
And the ZBA did the same. We were going with the June 11th meeting, and everyone beyond the 10 will be out in the hallway or outside until they need to come in for the hearing.
Planning board is a little different, so.
I did have
I
a
mean,
note,
they set up those meetings anticipating a possible open, you know, all clear by then.
I got a note from Glenn from earlier in the meeting. In case any of the selectmen ask, the planning board will be holding meetings and hearings completely virtually via Zoom, beginning with the meeting on June 16th. Ellen, Glenn G. and I are working out the details and will be providing language and guidance to put on the website shortly.
So they wanna try to Zoom meetings.
I guess probably what's gonna have to take place is if someone wants to participate in that, we're gonna have to have an area set up in this town hall that someone can participate in that Zoom meeting. Because you have to take into account someone may not have a computer or internet and they can't call into that, so.
Right, the school district does that. they Zoom in a lot, but they also have a meeting room on site for someone else to
That's
come
open,
in.
yeah.
Right.
You have to allow them access.
Have to allow them access, right. Zoning boards are not as big as the planning board. I mean, there'd be 7 of us with Susan, including one alternate, and we do need to have an alternate there, because you never know which ones we're gonna recuse ourselves on. We don't usually have big crowds, with rare exceptions.
I guess the big thing is they need to be coordinating with the health officer to make sure that it's meeting the spirit of our intent here, and
Correct.
we're just capturing all those ankle biters that could potentially come up,
Yeah.
And you're talking 8 planning board members before you ever start.
and a recording secretary. You gotta roll.
I apologize, I have to leave because I have another meeting, and I don't mean to lay a bomb, but I'm just gonna say, I'm not gonna sign this one, the warrant article. It has a dragon mosquito, and that's a $32,000 contract. And it's in here for $4,800 just for 1 month. So, I don't know what the board wants to do with that, but we just set up a policy, everything, has to go out to bid, and it's a $32,000 contract.
Yeah, I think we had extended that last year, but we're way overdue on that going out to bid.
And we overspent that line.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I didn't mean to drop a bomb, but I
We're
apologize.
late for mosquitoes, right?
Well, they've already been out, I've seen them down the road from me,
Okay, there you
putting
go.
that stuff out, so that's gonna be a point of discussion here.
Sorry.
Okay, Kev.
Let's go back to the flooring for a minute.
Kevin, are these your keys?
Oh, yes, go far.
Do we need more bids for flooring?
Yes.
So I'll call the guy that I bid last time and see if he's interested.
2 more?
Yeah, we need 3, so.
You
How
were-
about Integrity, right there in Kingston,
If
across
you-
from Pondview?
Who?
Integrity Flooring across from Pondview?
Oh, yeah, the new guy,
Saturday.
yeah.
He's been 2 years now, I think.
You work on those, I'll work on the phone system.
Okay.
So, the way we leave it now, until we have the glass in there, town clerk, tax collector, well, I guess we'll talk to her in just a minute, but that's gonna remain an appointment-based system. So we'll just be basically holding the status quo until the construction is complete to adhere to the new pandemic safety guidelines.
So what I also did to try to help Tammy on her end of it, anything like the keys for the boat launch, I took half of them, we put it on Facebook and put it out, so they can just walk into the lobby, and they've been coming in all day long buying keys, they identify themselves, to Lori as a town resident, we sell them a key.
Okay.
So anything we can help take the load off Tammy as well.
Did that work all right this weekend?
Yeah, it did work well. I locked it, I hung a sign there, and they know that they've gotta come to either Tammy or the PD to buy a key, and it worked out very well. Good.
Okay, good.
So, yeah, anything we can do to help her take some of that load, because we're open Monday through Friday, our lobby's open, and we're set up to be able to help her if she needs help.
Perfect.
So we'll get bids on the phone system, we'll get bids on the flooring. I would ask the board if we could generate a letter of thanks to Ryan Denver for Select Demo Services, who donated fixing over that center room, and for donating furniture to the town.
Why don't we do that next meeting when they're finished?
Okay, well, we're going down either the end of it or next week, and I was just gonna hand it to
Just kind of,
if that's what the board felt was appropriate to do, to accept it, and
Yeah, I would like to vote on that, to accept the donation, and then we have another donation we have to accept, so I think
Sure.
at that point, we'll accept that donation, and I agree, a nice certificate would be in order for that, very generous donation. But, so just to recap here, you're gonna get 2 more quotes for the flooring, Dawn, you're gonna get 2 more quotes for the buzzer phone
And phone
system. And then at our next meeting in a week and a half, once we have all those things,
why don't we get those quotes to Susan to send out so we can make a decision
yep,
On
on those
June
as fast as we
8th.
can?
Our next meeting would be June 8th.
for at least the floors, because the sooner we can move on the floors, the
Yeah.
sooner we can move on everything.
Oh, yeah, we could do an Evo.
yeah, I was just
Even
gonna say, we
phone
can,
system, I mean, if we can get that rolling.
yeah. If we can get those 2 quotes in, we'll have a Zoom meeting just to
Oh, sure.
accept those, and probably the same thing for the phone system. I would like to get this building open as soon as possible, though. residents can get in here.
So the glass should be up on Tori's counter, the countertop done, either the end of this week or beginning of next. I think it would be fair to talk to Tammy. I mean, she may be able to, and I don't know, would have to speak to her to see if she feels okay to open up the building as long as they're wearing a mask. I don't know if that's problematic for her, or she still wants to let them in one at a time.
Why don't we see the time frame on the phone system and everything before we make that step? Because
Yeah, if
we're
we're
talking,
meeting,
Yep,
Can
we
you
can
call-
ready
text
for,
her?
yeah.
we're talking about at least our next meeting before open.
Yeah, because you're talking, you know, if everybody's good with sitting at these tables, then Rich doesn't have to move
yeah, it's just, this is temporary, so yeah, I don't
Temporary,
see any
yeah.
big deal.
because you don't want Rich to have to move.
Let's make the
in and out.
decision for them, all right?
Yeah, I'm
'Cause
with
we-
you
Yeah, because we don't want to move the furniture in and out.
100
the front.
times, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Phil, while we're waiting for Tammy, you want to talk about the dog park?
Well, I just wanna make sure that, so, the floor and the phones, we'll do a Zoom meeting to accept those, whatever the low bid is on that, so we can get this going along.
Yeah.
And I guess my only concern would be with that being wide open there. It's a lot to ask for Tammy and her people to keep an eye to make sure someone isn't
Well,
messing up.
I'm saying after that's up,
Yeah,
then you could,
He made it sound like that would be this week. Or
yeah, this week on Monday,
latest.
yeah. So at that point, you could decide, well, if Tammy's good with it, we could open up at least to the town clerk, tax collector. I mean, you still gotta do the floors and stuff on this side,
mhm.
but if it helped get people in and out with Tammy, if she thought that was a prudent thing to do, without marching out to the hallway every,
Yeah, that's foolish for them to continue doing
And
that.
I'd want to know, you know, it's going to be weird to let people just walk in 1 week and 2 weeks later, we're going to just lock the doors. That may be awkward, so just think about it.
Yeah, it's a good point, and
Just let her decide. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever is comfortable for her, that's important.
it's been tough on her because she's scheduling people now and people are calling in and can't get,
Oh, I
you know,
know.
it's chaotic for her.
It's a busy time of year.
It is, yeah, so.
And the car manufacturers haven't even begun to give the deals yet.
Yeah, so she could tell us better what works for her.
We had one more question too while you're on the subject, if we're going to be staggering shifts when we open, or I guess we'll,
yes.
I thought we decided that we were gonna bring Robert in during the day and Peter from noon time on. Didn't we discuss that the other day?
Right, he wanted some flexibility, if you remember, but as long as he and Robert are not in the same room at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah, the intent is to keep people from meeting with meeting with a customer and then someone else is working right there. We wanna minimize the exposure to our employees, especially ones in the high-risk category, so, also, Susan and Tori, I guess, will be in separate offices now, so that's not an issue. The customer, I think Robert and Pete are the big one that we have to focus on. You know, town clerk, tax collector, they've got their own dynamic working there, so. Speaking of which, Mrs. Bakey,
No.
Is that different than the one you sent me?
Thank you, Mrs. Bakey.
Thanks, chief.
Anytime. Thank you for your service in this town.
Thanks.
See you, Graham.
did you have anything for us, Graham?
What? No.
Everything good? We'll count that as a department head meeting. Thumbs up.
Always thinking, chief.
Thank you for your time. I know you guys are starting to discuss opening up, so I have a couple concerns, a couple questions. First of all, we stay open till 8 o'clock on Monday night normally, and I would like to reduce that to 7 o'clock. If you can see, we started keeping track of how many customers we had between 4 and 5, 6 and 7, 7 and 8 back at the beginning of the year. And you can see that it significantly drops off after 7 o'clock at night. And it's a long day. A 12-hour day is a long day, especially when we have an election the next day or tax time. So I also noted on here what time our support closes and some of the surrounding towns. It's not completely unusual. If ever someone had to do something at 7:30, I would make arrangements to make that happen. I try to work very well with people. I try to bend. So but we haven't been open late on a Monday night since COVID started, and we have not had an issue.
No one's complained at all.
No one's complaining. And I don't specifically have to ask you guys, but I'm trying to play nice. I can set my own hours. But I would love your support.
So you wanna take that hour and add it onto the front end and open at 7?
No, I don't. No,
But the
I,
same- I was gonna say, Tanya, one of the reasons that Betty went to the 8, that we were not digital at all.
Right.
And now that we've had 2 months, 2.5 months totally digital, other than the appointments, there's a lot more people that will probably just go online and not even worry about
Right.
getting to the town hall by 7 o'clock at night.
I'll make a motion that we take the town clerk's recommendation and reduce the hours to closing at 7 PM on Monday nights.
thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Susan, roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
Yes,
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you.
easy.
Perfect. Then just a couple more things. I don't, not sure when you're planning to open the building, but we have to do something about the traffic in the hallway.
We were just talking about
You wouldn't believe how many people we have to go back for their driver's license or their paperwork, and there's just people in the hall, and we're in the hall all day long. And today, a guy tried to come in with somebody else, and another lady, Holly has to take in wheelchair and push her down the hall. So we've got to do something. I'm not sure what the answer is, although I really like that buzzer.
So
I
we,
like the buzzer
we
idea.
spoke of 2 things. In the town, we voted to look at doing the phone system with the buzzer, am I correct?
Yep.
And,
We're getting 3 bids.
Awesome,
And the camera.
and the camera.
awesome.
So until then, until we can get everything in place, what's your thought about opening, unlocking the door, because you know better than I do, and making people, not you, but requiring them to wear a mask while they come in? That way it doesn't expose you and your people to every person that comes in, but they would wander in with a mask on, so you wouldn't have to go chase them.
Yep.
So, does that make sense to you?
And that's fine if you guys tell me a date that you're gonna say, okay, we're gonna unlock the doors. I just worry about people congregating because,
But it's okay if they got a mask, because there's no 6-foot limit.
There's no 6-foot rule if both people have masks on.
okay. Well, if I have that glass, I'm not worried about myself. I'm more worried about myself walking back and forth down the hall.
Right, so,
Not that I can't use the exercise, but,
but because it's gonna take some time to put the floor in on the other side
Right.
and get the phone system and so on and so
Okay.
forth. So we're just wondering, it's probably gonna be safer for you to open that door, let them come in with masks on, because they can stand any distance.
okay.
That way you don't have to keep running out to the door.
And if they don't have a mask on, who's gonna say,
So we're gonna hang a sign that's from the ceiling as they come in, like the big one I put down.
okay,
It says mask required, this one's gonna say, no mask, no service. And, you know, if it becomes a major problem, then I can come over and help educate.
okay. And if, this is just my side, right? So if someone comes in looking for their trash can,
So the intent here is, this wouldn't take place until the glass is up on that new.
okay,
On both sides, or for both
Because we
guys.
don't need someone hopping into there or whatever. but,
correct,
It would be both sides would be open
okay.
in that scenario.
And when do we think that's gonna happen? 'Cause I just need to know
Next
when I'm,
week, roughly,
next week?
Tuesday, Monday,
Okay.
Tuesday. It's
Perfect.
contingent on the glass being in.
Okay. Because I'm just trying to figure out how many more days I should make appointments, so.
How far
and I'm-
out are you?
A week and a half.
So if we did.
The 8th.
What'd you just say? That what's gonna open next week?
If the glass is in there, Tori and the selectmen's desk would be open.
Oh, I thought we were gonna wait on the selectmen until the flooring was done. That we said in our week and a half meeting, that's when
We
we
need the
make a
flooring,
decision.
that's gonna be done.
Otherwise, we'll be closing back down again, won't we?
We should have a soft opening June 8th. Well, just like retail.
I'll bring the balloons.
There you go. I mean, and not announce it, that's what I mean by a soft. We have a meeting, a regular meeting on June 8th. Let's have a soft opening that day. Open up the town hall, assuming that the glass is in on both sides and the carpet's in the selectman's office, on that side of the building. And then put out a release a week later. Gives us us time to see.
What works,
time,
right.
What the issues are.
I think that's a great idea.
And then if we have to go back to locking the doors and making appointments, we do that.
Yeah,
So we could test it with Tammy earlier.
right. And a number of people still come to the town hall not knowing that that we're not open.
A lot.
A lot of
Is
people.
that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
a lot of
Oh, yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
They
Clueless.
call,
Yes.
outside the town hall, the
Yeah.
door's locked.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, just to make sure I understand, so we're gonna, on the 8th, we're gonna open.
What day is the 8th?
It's a
Monday.
Okay,
It's a week from Monday.
So
Okay.
on the,
2 weeks from day before yesterday. but-
on,
Okay.
on the 8th, we're gonna open Tammy's side, because she's all set on that side. And we're hoping, no, because the
No.
floors won't be done.
No, I thought we were open, it's all or nothing.
we're gonna open Tammy's side.
Right.
Yeah, it's all or nothing.
Yes.
The
But-
only thing that won't be in is the phone system.
Well, so let's do this. When the glass is in, the door can remain unlocked. Tammy can process customers with the door unlocked.
Okay.
The consensus is you walking up and down the hall is the stupidest thing because it's just exposing you repeatedly.
right.
Yes.
So that will be the soft opening. It's not gonna be announced, you know, us just doing it now, but it won't be announced, the door will be unlocked. You can process your appointments. Your appointments obviously take priority, but you don't need to go down there and let
Yep.
them in. Once the floor is in, I see no reason for the selectman's office not to be open under the open door policy. And then once the phone system is in, we can announce that the town hall is open. Does that work for everybody?
I think that's a great idea.
So at that point, we go back to the locked door.
Yeah.
And buzz them in.
But
It's a new system then.
But when we say the town hall is open is when that buzzer system will be in. It's
Okay.
just people who are coming in for scheduled appointments and just happen to be coming in unknowing that the town hall is open 2 months after the fact will just come through the door
Yep.
and be processed that way.
And if you want, if someone's walking in, you can always have them make an appointment to come back and get service.
Yep.
Or an hour, or whatever it might be, depending on what you already have scheduled.
Right, right. Just tell them they have to wait.
Right, right.
Okay,
Does that work?
that works. I appreciate your time.
Easy
Nothing else?
peasy.
That's it.
And the, and.
Tax bills are going out today. That's my next stop, bringing all the tax bills down.
And the social distancing thing that they made has worked wonderful, that Rich's guys has made.
It works wonderful, except that people keep walking into it. We had to tie a balloon to it, and the chief put a blue ribbon across it because.
Two changes. Are you sure that like this is not gonna bring down the whole system? I mean,
No.
taking an hour off and a new divider,
Hey, we've been working hard for the last 3 months. It has not been easy or fun.
So,
So what's the rate, by the way, tax rate?
I'm sorry?
What's the tax rate?
22?
Still from last year.
Yeah,
It's the same thing?
yeah.
Yeah, I
They
can
said
read
it in October.
I didn't see anything, so that's why I asked.
You'll get your bill.
I don't need to rush on that.
But you can view your bill online anytime. And you can pay it online too, yes.
other than that folder stuff are you looking for? Is there anything else that you need when we go to Boston?
Oh, no.
Just that folder stuff?
Yep, that would be fabulous if you
Be
could find
asking
one.
for a pound of hundreds while he's down.
Yeah,
Yeah, anytime.
she knows me better than that.
Thank you.
thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
All right, so we're past the COVID-19, back on the agenda here. Request for the dog park to reopen.
I'm gonna make a motion that we open the dog park, and the reason for that is it's an open space. If people feel comfortable, they can go. If they feel like it's crowded when they get there, they can decide not to go in. And leave it at the access of the participants.
I'll second that, Susan. The only question I had, are people good about picking up the dog poop?
We have a motion and a second and a question that has nothing to do with the pandemic.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
They did send something with, they propose new,
She's got a sign.
I was gonna ask where the letter was. I didn't see
it
it.
should be in your packet of stuff.
She did have a letter.
Face masks required, sanitizing when entering and exiting, distancing humans while in the park, limiting numbers inside the park, and poop pickup is required. So you know.
I'm not the policeman, so.
My only caveat, has the health inspector seen that?
I don't know if she sent it to him. I can make sure that he sees it first if you wanna wait.
Do you wanna make it contingent upon?
I would just add that as a contingency on the motion, is that it per the health officer's approval of the proposed plan.
Okay.
The only thing I read on that to the negative was that, that when these dog parks reopen, the dogs aren't accustomed to all the other dogs again, and they've had some more dog bite type of things. So whoever is gonna do that, I hope they can,
Don't look at me, I'm not going anywhere near it, so.
I'm hoping that it goes well, so we don't have a number of dogs.
We'll have Gus Patrol.
Gus doesn't go near other people, or other dogs especially. He only gets to ride around the truck.
So we're gonna revisit that with Peter? Is that what we're doing, revisiting?
Yeah, once we vote.
Yeah,
Vote, and then I'll make sure he gets it, and if he's got any concerns, to let us know.
yep. Pending approval by the health officer.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coons?
Yes.
And Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. New business, we got a complaint from a resident on Tucker Road regarding the Southeast Land Trust, town forest, Tucker and French Family Forest. Don, you wanna address that?
Sure, so I took a call on that, on Tucker Road, it's a dirt class 6.
Still BD Road?
No, you go in,
That's Thorn Road, right?
it's off the lawn and go right beside Bean's house, the Bean's house. To the left, it's like a dirt driveway, but it's a class 6 road, it goes all the way up.
Comes out to North Andover, right?
Yeah, yep, yep. So, both ends are open, they park on, behind Brenda Beatty's house, they park on that end and they walk in, go over the bridge, et cetera. And, so a lot of people have been parking down by the bridge on 107 and going in that way to the trail.
At Jane's old house?
Uh,
She had the gift shop there,
just before that.
just before,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Can't think of the last name, sorry.
because there's no parking there, a lot of people are trying to get in and around there, so they're going up Bean Road and parking on the side of that.
Has that been more so this year because of the virus, because there's less outdoor activities?
So there have been more people using that trail than I think ever before.
Okay.
I mean, it's really packed on some weekends and stuff. We've
Mostly
taken,
Massachusetts people.
we've taken a number of
No
complaints.
kidding, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've been taking a number of complaints, but it's a state highway and they're allowed to park off the side. If they're parked into the road, then it's a hazard that we can deal with. If not, if they're off the road, then we can't control that. It's a state highway. So, there's nothing in there that would allow police to go in and not allow people to park on the side of a class 6 road, unless they were blocking it for emergency access. So, I mean, I guess the town could post it. They could, but it's a class 6 road.
Yeah.
So we gotta do something, right? I mean, can we post it at least? Even if it's unenforceable?
I guess what I would do, I would
No?
refer this back to Rich as far as what his thoughts were. I know it's been addressed several times before. I'm not sure that we could even post it. I'm not sure though.
Can the Conservation Commission?
No,
It's a class 6 road.
this is an old argument. Forgive me if I'm wrong here.
No, it's
Someone
right.
wants to live in the middle of nowhere and they get really pissed that people come and drive by their house on a class 6 road that they don't own. And it's not something that, you can't put no parking signs up, you can't do those things because it's still a public right of way. It's
And because it's a class 6 road, which means it's not paved, it's really just easement, almost an access to the land and back, right?
yeah, I mean,
right away, it's a right
It's,
away.
yeah, it's not paved, it's, obviously, most of the roads in Kingston, like the town takes care of class 5. So the class 6 is just an unpaved road that allows people to
Go into the forest.
drive over.
And I don't wanna, I'm not trying to say that this resident is trying to get special treatment or anything
No,
like
no,
that.
no.
I'm sure it's, but it's, people think when they live on one of those roads, no one's allowed to drive on them because they're underused, but they are still roads. And we can't block them, we can't, I know techniques in the past have been putting boulders along the side, so people, I've seen it all. It's just,
So there's nothing we can do?
I don't think you can't block a class 6 because the public has a right to travel.
And that's what they want us to do, is to block that road?
I'm not sure what they want. They're
Why don't
just-
you work your magic and charm them, and say, sorry?
well,
You could mark it as a dead-end road, because it dead ends where the trail begins at the trailhead.
Could you put a sign like no access?
Most people know that though.
Yeah, but they're going there to hike. You're absolutely right. They're going there to hike.
Do they park on the road and then go in to hike? Or they're parking on
I
the,
inform them if they're blocking their driveway, parking in the driveway, we can certainly do a lot about that.
okay.
So we can help enforce anything if they're blocking someone in or out.
and I think if they're blocking the class 6 road, that's also something that we can
Yes.
enforce, but
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I can do anything with that, absolutely. But as far as the class 6, it would take the board to vote on what they wanted to do. You could go, I think you have to go to town meeting to close a class 6 road. I think the town has to vote on it, if I'm not mistaken.
But then we would close access to that trail, is that correct?
That, you would close access to that trail, yeah.
And that's
Well,
what-
at that location, you would. yeah.
Okay, but you'd still have it from the North Road.
I think, I'm trying to remember the sign, because I was just on a class 6 road the other day. It was Old Gordon Road in Brentwood, I believe, has, acceptable signage on the end of that. I'll have to drive over there and take a
Sure.
look at that, but I think we could put a sign that says no turnaround or no outlet or something.
No
like-
outlet.
No outlet, I think, is the acceptable thing that you can put on there, but anything beyond that, I've seen this a bunch of times where people try to exclude
This
ATVs.
problem's probably gonna go away as more and more stuff opens up. And people are going there because that was the choice. You couldn't
Or
go
our
to
town
the beach.
forest is a rousing success, and we,
More than we think.
Yeah, they're doing a great job, I think.
as far as Southeast Land Trust concerned, we're gonna be placing some additional signage at strategic locations, reminding visitors to respect the neighbors, additional promotion through social media about the rules, and having their dog leashed. That is also a key thing. So we did receive a donation fund for the COVID relief fund, or a donation for the COVID relief fund of $100. And then we also have received a donation from Select Demo. They have donated time, materials, and labor to construct a pandemic-compliant office space downstairs, so that allows us to reopen the town hall, as we were just discussing. So I would accept a motion to, or I guess I have to say who it was for the first
Make a motion to accept both donations and a recommendation to Select Demo to put a value on their donation for
We'll
further.
have to know what the town is gonna get for furniture that they're gonna be throwing away
Yeah, I mean, and the work,
in the work.
so they have a donation value.
I can ask for that, yeah.
Okay, get a motion? Second?
Sure.
Okay, motion and second. Further discussion?
I'm gonna abstain, and I'll tell you why. Because he's coming before
Yeah,
the
that's right.
zoning board
Yeah,
in June
yeah,
with Joe Wilson.
yeah.
I probably will abstain from that as well, to be honest with you. I don't think I'll sit in the, I'm just
I mean, the
uncomfortable.
person that donated the $100.
No,
Oh, Select Demo.
No, they've got.
Select Demo has formed an LLC with Joe
That's right.
Wilson and are building a home together, which is not, it's great,
Yeah,
but I also chair the zoning, so
No, that's fine.
I'm abstaining on this vote, and I probably will not participate in the hearing either, so that there's no
conflict.
misperceived conception of anything quid pro quo.
Yeah,
Does that make sense, gentlemen? I just-
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
Okay. Further discussion? Did we have a name attached with the $100 donation?
I think I copied the check, didn't I?
Yeah, just, it's a cashier's check.
Yeah, I don't.
Was it an anonymous donation?
Ben, that's what I got from him, where's the check with that note?
Okay. Well, thank you, whoever you are.
It was me.
Thanks, Rich.
All right, roll call vote.
Alessio,
Abstention.
Briggs,
Yes.
Coombs,
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
All right. Bond approval and agreement. So we were approved for the bond.
That was pretty cool, huh? Fast.
There's two parts to that. There's a part that's gotta be signed by you and Tammy and I forget who else. And the other one is for Tammy, just to certify that you discussed it at this meeting.
So just for the record, what I'm gonna do is read this and take a motion to allow me to sign for it. So I'm just gonna read the first page here. I'm pleased to inform, or this is, from the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank. I am pleased to inform you that the loan application for the Town of Kingston in the amount of $3 million for 20 years at level principal was approved, subject to no material adverse changes in the town's financial position at a meeting of the Board of Directors of the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank held on Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. Payment on your New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank bonds are due 30 days prior to the bond payment date for this loan and all outstanding loans with the bond bank, which we don't have any. You will soon receive your loan agreement from your bond counsel. The loan agreement includes an estimated maximum interest rate, which we have set well above the current market, as we need to allow for some change between now and the date of sale. However, if rates remain at current levels, we expect your actual interest rate to be much less than the maximum rate set in the loan agreement, which Chuck stated was set at 3% for the high rate. Please verify the amount of the loan agreement and term indicated in Exhibit A. Loan agreements are due back in our office by June 22nd, 2020. So I will entertain a motion to sign this on behalf of the board.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second. Further discussion.
I'll just make the comment that this was approved by the voters, you know, at the election, that this isn't something we're just doing out of the blue.
We're following the will of the voters.
Will of the voters.
Exactly,
Yeah, and there was a bond hearing, and before the vote, did all the steps.
yeah.
Yep. Just transparency all the way is what I
Crossing the
say.
Ts, dotting the Is.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Alessio,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Coombs,
I will abstain since I'll be signing it.
all right, and Wilson.
Yes.
There's that. Committee liaison reports.
You have a draft of the 79E in your packet.
Yeah.
This is, the committee has come up with this as kind of a first draft of what we should do to enact 79E. And they've been working quite a bit to get this to this point, and this is based off a lot of other towns and input from other people. You know, they didn't just come up with this. There's a list on the front page of what they think the advisory board should consist of. So I guess basically, if everybody could look at this over the next week and see if you have any comments, and maybe I can get the comments answered before our next meeting, so maybe we can finalize it at our next meeting. It's from Susan Ayers, Phil, if you're looking for it.
Yeah, I don't.
Looks like that.
It's an email I can find.
Yeah, there is a copy of the file.
And this group has been doing this, been Glenn and Glenn, Virginia, Debbie Powers,
Because you remember at a previous select board meeting,
on Virginia Moore's.
we talked about enacting, having them set up the parameters, and that's what this is.
And anybody else that I forgot. You may want to check your screen and see if anybody's commenting on what it is.
No, I did have a comment a while back that it's hard to hear and on other subjects. So we'll finish this and I'll,
All right, so we should have that on the agenda for approval at the next meeting.
yep, finalize.
Yep.
Okay, we did have a inspectors meeting last Thursday. The bulk of it was taken up by the big pile of poop that the state dropped in our lap regarding opening restaurants again. So we did our best to inform all the restaurants in town. Actually, the fire chief hand walked all the instructions to all the restaurants. It's Graham, right?
Yes.
And both chiefs have been following up to make sure that we're following the rules. So, a couple outstanding items. We are going to have another meeting this Thursday, which I guess is tomorrow, to just cover more of these. We had some more open items that we're just trying to get a hold of.
The only other thing I had was the purchase and sale for the seminary property has been signed last week. I have one hard copy, but I asked Tom for an electronic copy, so I can send it on to you. They are looking to have the fees waived, the building permits and so, but pretty much like the fire station. That's something we anticipated. They agreed to not do anything to the main building, not tear down the old seminary building before coming to the town. So they didn't give a technical conservation easement, but they agreed that they would not tear down the building without getting approval by the Town of Kingston. So I thought that was important for us as a community, to make sure that they would not tear down that building. And that was basically it. It was pretty pro forma.
So they waived the fees?
They want the town to waive the fees.
Okay.
They didn't waive any fees.
Okay.
They're saying that the agreement is contingent on that being done. They got the 79E, that was one contingent, having the town waive the fees. But we haven't even started the process yet, so we wouldn't have waived the fees. And no restriction on the water, if we need the water. I mean, that was the same cistern in place, and then the conservation, it's not a conservation, the historic easement about not tearing down that building in future. That was agreed to. The Town of Kingston would have to agree for them to do that. So that's good. But I'll get a copy, an electronic version to send to you guys. So you take a look at it. Not unreasonable. So that's all set. The library went well with the plant sale. Rich was here earlier. I didn't have anything else from Rich, so, and HDC hasn't met yet.
Conservation Commission is going to be meeting here on the 4th of June at 6:45 p.m.
Meeting here at the library.
You know something?
Most of the time they meet at the library.
Then my mistake then. At the library?
I have to check. Somebody asked to meet here.
Or maybe it is
I don't have my
here.
calendar in front of me, but they might be here.
They could spread out a little more here.
Maybe that's why. I thought it was here, but I may be mistaken.
Okay. Anybody else? Public comment? No public.
The only comment I have on here goes back to the other subject, the question from Robert and Tori. Will the door to the bathroom in the hallway be locked when we're allowing people in?
That's a good point.
Well, we don't have to decide this second, right? We don't know.
Just get that
And
out
we don't
there
know
to
the
think
answer
about.
to that.
Yeah.
That's something we want Peter to look into too. So that basically they're asking, are we allowing the public to use public bathrooms?
Well, we've got the one public bathroom. That's another question. I think he was concerned about the door into the hallway and upstairs.
Sorry.
the door that goes to the bathrooms also goes upstairs.
So we could actually, well, you can't lock it because that's a means of egress.
That's an issue.
You
Yeah,
can't,
might
yeah,
not
you
be able
can't,
to.
you
You have to
can't,
have public bathrooms in public buildings.
yeah, public buildings, you could have
And I don't know
bathrooms.
that we could lock it.
Well, we have the one,
Yeah,
the handicap bathroom that's right in the hallway.
But, yeah, but we can't lock because that's a means of egress.
Can we put caution tape on it?
You could do that, and you could put a,
We'd have to ask Graham that, fire code stuff.
it's a good point.
Can you make a note of that, Susan, that we follow up on that,
Yep.
please?
That would be a Graham question.
That is a good question. Thank Robert and Tori.
I shall.
All right,
There was one other question along with the dog park. I did get a question about use of fields.
oh,
And
yeah,
there's
sorry.
something new that came through from the state. I made a copy, it's part of that 2.0, that they can use the fields for practice, it sounds like, but not for games, events, with guidelines. So, the,
So they have to socially distance?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
really, in practice?
Yeah.
In practice?
So the big thing's gonna be enforcement, so I would recommend that we look into that a little deeper, and that we would want to issue people times and dates to use that or something.
And who's we, Kunosabe?
Who's we, and who's gonna be supervising them to make sure they comply with that?
would everyone have to have a facilities use? And then, the one person that called, it was a one-time thing for a charity event or something, but that's different, that's not gonna be covered by this, so.
I would think that we would want someone to sign an agreement that they follow whatever our rules and safety stuff is, and health stuff. If we're just, rather than just let people just start using, you know what I'm saying?
Is that something Paul Butler
I
can?
was just gonna say, Paul's got some free time now, since we're not doing the rec program.
Right, I mean, take that off of Rich instead of
Yeah.
going through him. Let's go through Paul and the recreation.
Might have to issue, well, coaches know the combinations, so they can get into the field, lock it when they leave. Assign times instead of having all three fields occupied. I don't know, but we definitely ought to think about it.
Yeah, you've got Magnuson 1 and 2, and you've got Como. So you've got 3 field locations.
Do you wanna talk to Paul and try to get some sort of a policy before we
Maybe,
do anything?
do we want Paul to come in at the next meeting and have that discussion, have Peter here as well? To discuss the opening of the fields and how it's gonna look?
Yeah, I'm not really seeing that as a huge priority at this moment, so yeah, that can wait till the next meeting, and let's just get Paul and Peter here.
It's just something the governor said, and that's probably why people are picking up on it, was he wanted to try to get youth activities going again.
I'm trying to get outside, right, understandably so.
They're still looking at the state park and when they're gonna open and how that's gonna happen.
You should see what they came down for the schools, opening the schools. It'd be easy, the kids would have more fun if they were sent to prison.
Well, they're putting only, 13 kids
The
in?
rate they're going, they'll get there soon.
No kidding.
13 kids.
Kids in a bus,
13 kids in a bus, so they need, 3 or 4 buses to,
3 times.
3 times, yeah.
3 times the amount of buses. Are they paying for that? I don't think so.
No, we're paying for it.
No, exactly correct.
So we have an administrative abatement for 4 Ruckerman Road, which, for those of you who don't know, we now own. So it wasn't put as exempt.
Yeah, they changed it to the town, but it didn't get the right designation, so it created a tax bill.
So if there is, that's not that one. Too many files going here, sorry. If there's no objection to that, I'm gonna sign that.
There's no objection. Again, that's another one of those in one pocket and out the other.
Right.
Same pair of pants.
There's a tax exemption, I'll send this around. And And then the junkyard permits, so those are up again. What we've done in the past is Dawn and I have just gone out, we give them a heads up, schedule a time, and we'll go out and speak with them, see the area. So if anyone else would like to be in on that, Dawn, you'll give them a heads up and just kind of schedule a time, we'll go from there.
Did you already go out to John's?
I went out to John's, but I didn't inspect it.
Okay, so that's still
So-
on hold. He sent in his application.
I do go there, on an occasional basis to check the dumpster that's there. People are certainly using it.
Can you check with him and see if he wants a sign put up? I've left him messages and haven't gotten a response.
On the dumpster?
Yeah, we talked about putting a allowed and not allowed sign up.
Would you ask the other two to make sure and send in their application? They're supposed to apply, and then we sign that.
I did get a call from Kenny Cabral. He wanted to know what he should do, and I told him I'd get back in touch with him. So based on what we got tonight, I'll tell him to put in for the permit, and that at some point we'll come out and see him.
All right, we've got a request to appoint Evie Nathan as the rep to the ESSER-LAC, Local Rivers Management Advisory Committee.
So moved.
I guess my question is, she says right on her note that you can't attend many of the meetings, so I would rather put someone who can actually be at the meetings. Is there anyone else on the Conservation Commission who'd be interested in this, or
I don't know.
can you ask them at the 4th meeting?
I will.
I withdraw my motion.
What is the name of it again?
ESRLA.
ESRLAC.
Slides right off the tongue.
ESRLA?
LAC.
As the back.
Okay, I will take a motion on the minutes for the 11th and the 20th.
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second and discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Alessio,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Coombs,
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I also have a pay rec here for the work on the library. And Rich has said it's okay to pay. It's for $39,432. If anyone's wondering why that stopped, it was because the temperatures weren't warm enough. There was a lot of issues with the mortar actually sticking. I did go out there, just for the board's knowledge. I met with Rich out there. As they were digging in, you know, scraping the mortar off, it's pretty much like a rubble foundation. It's just more crappy mortar behind it. The engineers that we retained were not concerned about it. They basically, you know, they're gonna go 1.5 to 2 inches in there, and it'll hold it for another 80 to 100 years in theory. It's common, but they just wanted to make sure that we were aware of it, so I did meet Rich out there and we looked at it. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign this unless there's any. I don't even think I need to sign this. All right, we do have one non-public issue, correct, Rich?
One quick non-public issue.
Under
which,
Personnel,
personnel?
whatever number that is.
91-A, comma 2,
It's either A or
semicolon
B.
A, personnel. Anybody got any last minute things?
Nope.
Okay. That will conclude the public portion of this meeting. Thank you very much for joining.
Clear
evening for all. I don't know. Adam, are you still there?